This is the Citrus County Planning and Development Commission public hearing for September the 16th, 2021. If you would like to join us at this time, I invite you to stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, please give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
So let it be. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Good morning. We have the following Planning and Development Commission members present this morning. Michael Facemeyer, Chair. David Bramblett, First Vice Chair. Robert Bass, Second Vice Chair. Richard Barnes. James Royce. Kurt Stone. Carol Scragg, Alternate. And Chuck Dixon, School Board Representative.
Thank you. If any person decides to appeal any decision made by the Commission with respect to any matter considered at this hearing, he or she will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record will include testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. During public input portions of the meeting, individuals will be given 3 minutes. Representatives of an organization will be given 5. When anyone wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete a yellow form, hand it to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number of the application for which you are speaking. The yellow forms can be found at the podium by the door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker. Comments will be limited to the topics being heard. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the taped record. At this time, I'll open this hearing to the public for general comments they may have for the board. Any public input? Seeing no one, I'll close the public portion of the meeting, and I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes of July 15th, 2021.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Bass,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Scragg. Additions or corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Staff announcements, Joanna or Michael?
Yeah, I do want to thank Ms. Scragg for filling in last minute as an alternate, so we have an odd number of commissioners, so thank you very much. Amy Bidwell, who was presenting the first application, is not present, so Joe is pinch hitting for her, so give him a second if you have questions to find the answers. And our county attorney, Denise Lynn, is not here, so I'm going to go ahead and go right into her area of ex parte communication and ask if any of the members have any ex parte communication for V2112, CPA AA PUD 2111, or CU 2109. And we'll start with Ms. Scragg.
None.
None.
Site visit on CU 2109.
Site visit on all?
None. Site visits on all?
None.
Thank you.
Nothing else?
That's it. Thank you.
Michael?
One comment at the board meeting last Tuesday, they approved the LDC changes that y'all looked at back in July. We took out the one with the residential buffer outside of the subdivisions. It just didn't seem to make sense as we were trying to get some that were non-controversial changes. And be prepared for more coming down for y'all to look at, and I imagine they'll be somewhat substantive as well. And that's it.
Thank you. Time has arrived for the first hearing. Susan?
Yes, the first application is B-21-12, Stillwater, Mike, and Colette Hall. This request is for a variance from the Citrus County Land Development Code for the placement of a pool and a pool deck with reduction in required setbacks from a wetland jurisdictional line. This is an aerial view of the subject property. And looking west on West Fort Island Trail. Looking east on Fort Island Trail, and the site plan as submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Clark Stillwell, Law Office of Clark A. Stillwell LLC. My professional address is 320 Highway 41, the Brandon Bank Building in Amherst, Florida, and I represent the applicants, Miles and Colette Hall, the owner of the property. The subject application is a request for a variance from the waterfront setback provisions of the County Land Development Code. I know you're all familiar with them. It requires 35 feet with a swale and berm, and we asked for 25 feet with an engineered stormwater system. The accessory use is a pool and pool deck. So Amy, you driving the bus this morning? Okay, let's go. This is the aerial that we submitted off the county GIS system. As you can see, the subject parcel is unique. It's 23 acres, which is a conforming lot of record in the coastal area. You don't have a lot of single-family 20-acre lots. However, as the staff report points out and the application points out, the developable area is less than or approximately a half acre of that 23 acres. The rest is jurisdictional wetlands. The house was built in the 70s. The decks were added in the 80s, according to the PA's records, which are part of the application. At that time, the 1979 Land Use Plan and Zoning Code and the 1980 Land Use Plan and Zoning Code had no waterfront setbacks at all. The only waterfront setback that would have applied, or jurisdictional setback, would have been FDEP standards at that time, which would have been 15 feet. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is a survey. You can see the access road in and the small area representing the uplands. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is a picture of the house. The significance of this is, as you can see, and I'm going to call it the top, it's from Mike Sarinsky in his environmental assessment and jurisdictional line report, which is part of the application. You can see the house is generally to the northern portion of this area that's buildable. And you can see where the driveway is, which meant, and Paul Gibbs, who was here, who did the design of the pool, and he's going to speak to that after I do, which meant basically we looked at, can we put this accessory use, authorized accessory use, where's the best location for it? And we had to deal with where the septic tank was, and the largest area to put this use, this accessory use, was what I'm going to call the southwest quadrant, or that corner to the left of the driveway where the drain field is and the septic tank. And Paul's going to speak to that. Let's go to the next one. This is the January FEMA map that was approved on January 15th. You can see a dot where the house is, and the property's in the E zone, not the coastal high hazard CZ zone. Next one. These are your LDC Variant Standards. I'm going to run through these relatively quickly because they don't change. The first one talks about, is there a special circumstances as a result to the peculiar to the land or the structure or the building? Well, all three apply here. As you can see, the house is uniquely designed. It is two across, which I'm not seeing a whole lot of with decks. But the property for sure is unique in the sense that it is a very, very small area surrounded completely by wetlands. And the staff report agrees that this is a unique piece of property and this standard is met. Thank you. Next one. This one is the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. The special conditions and circumstances relates back to number one. How did this piece of property get unique such that it would require a variance? And it wasn't as a result of Miles Hall and his wife, wasn't a result of their predecessor. It was a result of how this property the elevation of the property as it existed in 1976 when we adopted our first zoning code. So the Halls, the applicants, had nothing to do with this size of this property. And we've had discussions in the past about, well, they bought it, they should have known that they needed the variance. And I've read the case law that Mr. Sherman presented to you on April 4th when he did your training session. And then I've cited the successor case law, which basically said if it needed a variance from the prior owner, it needs a variance or qualifies for a variance from the new owner, and the new owner is not barred by applying. The staff report indicates that the special conditions and circumstances are a result of the applicant's actions in applying for a variance. Well, if that's the case, then every variance would not meet this standard. And that's not true, and I believe you know that. Next one. Does this confer upon the Halls a special privilege? An accessory use, a pool, is authorized under the code. It's enjoyed, that right to have that accessory use is enjoyed by every single family residential owner in the county. And we'll discuss further some prior variances as close as I could find, and the most recent as I could find. Mr. Bramlett was on the board, and I know Mr. Royce was on the board, was the Dr. Chung variance on the peninsula piece down the river, maybe a half mile. And that board, under these standards, granted Dr. Chung a 25-foot variance on a piece of property that was similarly situated in that it was a peninsula and it was surrounded by water. Next one, please, Amy. A little interpretation of the provisions of the code would deny the applicant the rights commonly enjoyed by others. And this goes back to the discussion we had about everyone is entitled to an accessory use. We talk about how we've addressed the stormwater impacts. Also, your records, now albeit they're dated, but they're the best records I can find and we've provided to you, is that there's over 5,000 homes in this county which have a pool. So you're not giving the Halls anything special here. It's very similar. Is it the minimum variance? That's the next criteria. We started with this, and Paul's going to speak to it. This is our fourth site plan. You may think you're seeing it for the first time, but we started with 4 different site plans. Mr. Hall has repaired his septic tank and repaired his drain field, upgraded it. That resulted in 1 set of changes. Local engineering and Mike Wilburn, who's here, designed the engineered stormwater system, and that resulted in another set of circumstances. So we designed this pool around it, and as is pointed out in the staff report, we're only talking about 270 square feet, which is approximately 10 feet that way and 30 feet that way. To Mr. Facemeyer's name tag to here, 30 feet, and 10 feet to Mr. Hockadale's. That's what we're talking about here. That goes to the issue of minimum. We address the stormwater impacts, and finally, we believe we're consistent with the comp plan. The comp plan standards say that any new lot should have a 50-foot setback. This is not a new lot. And the comp plan talks to impacts to wetlands, and it's cited in the staff report, but there are no impacts to wetlands by this. It's all done in the uplands, and the stormwater is caught and treated, pre-treated. Let's go to the next one, please, Amy. Here's the site plan. I'm going to let Paul talk about this. 2 comments. Florida Building Code requires for any pool, any location, 2 entrances. So you got the house entrance. If you were to have a pool on this property, you got to have a second entrance, hence the stairs. So that's mandated by code. And the second thing is at the Florida Building Code for pools, if you remember the Reimer variance 2 weeks ago, we discussed this, requires at least a 3-foot setback around the pool on one side. Next one, please. This is the engineered stormwater system. It is the code. It catches, treats the existing stormwater off the house and the new stormwater off the pool, and it's to the current Ldc standards, which is an enhancement to this particular piece of property. The house is guttered, therefore we can take those gutters and direct the stormwater into this system. Next one, please. This is Paul's work. You can see where the existing drain field is. There you can see where the stormwater system is. All right, next one. This is Paul's work. You can see the conceptual. Then the next one, please. This is the stuff from the Citrus County Property Appraiser's office about the number of residential pools in the backup materials in your application. I'll close with a couple quick comments. The idea of a reasonable use of a piece of property is in the code, and in Florida, an accessory use like a pool is clearly a residential accessory use, and a lot of people believe that it's reasonable. There's a letter in the application from one gentleman that indicates the numbers of pools up and down the Crystal River. The halls simply seek to enjoy a like privilege. The nearest residential properties is a condominium association. There are 6 properties identified in the staff report. Each of those 6 properties, all of those properties, enjoy access to a pool, a common community pool for that condominium association. In the picture in your backup material and in our PowerPoint, let's go to that, Amy. Wrong way. This is their common pool, and you can see it's located right on top of the water. That was built in the late 1980s. I did that project. Excuse me. And then, so to conclude, this idea of a reasonable use of the property, rhetorically, I asked you to look at the very last item on your agenda today. And that is their proposal mandated by the state legislature that is designed to protect personal and real property rights. Put that on the same plane as the conservation element, put that on the same plane and level as the future land use element, and each and every other element in your code. So it becomes an issue of balancing. And I think that we've tried to balance our application against what stormwater treatment is intended to do. What's the stormwater setback purpose? Treat the stormwater to prevent pollution to the abutting water body. And in fact, we enhance that in this application. Questions?
Questions from staff?
Did you have other presentations?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
Do you have other people will be present?
Paul's going to speak, yes.
Well, we can hear him first, and then we'll do questions afterwards.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
Susan, you want me to go back to the ones he prepared? Right.
If you could go back to the 3D graphics, that's a good one. My name is Paul Gibbs. I'm a landscape architect with Community Land Design here in Citrus County, 1773 East Cleveland Street, Hernando, Florida. Some of what I'm going to say, Clark has kind of mentioned already. This property is very unique. I've sat in this room listening to a lot of other similar setback variances from wetlands and water bodies. A lot of those are in more suburban type neighborhoods, old platted subdivisions. This particular property, we're essentially on an island in the middle of 23 acres of sawgrass. So we have no visual impact from that standpoint to our neighbors. The proposed pool, like Clark mentioned, we went through several iterations of this, and the southwest corner of the property where you're seeing the pool was the area that gave us, we had the most available setback, and we were also dodging the existing septic system and had an area allowance for the stormwater system improvements. You could see on this graphic the orange dashed line, that's the 25-foot setback. That's kind of what we as our consultant team decided to kind of use as our guide in limiting the development of the project. We originally had a much larger pool proposed. If you look closer to where it says septic tank, you'll see a dashed black line. That's the 35-foot wetland setback. And as you can see, most of the existing house structure does not even meet that requirement. Therefore, adding a pool would, within those standards would be very challenging. But we did use the portion of the property that did have the most available developable area. The total pool and deck area is probably about 750 or so square feet. Of that, 239 square feet are new encroachments into or having less than the 35-foot setback. So fairly minimal, extension beyond what the typical 35-foot setback would require. One thing you may notice on this, the house it's a two-story structure. You'll see the carport underneath. The main living area is what I would call the second floor. The pool, before I get to the pool, each corner of the plus of the house has a raised wooden deck. It basically fills in the triangle of each of the plus shapes of the house. And those decks are about 8 feet above grade. The proposed pool, you can see we're also proposing to elevate that to match the level of the house on the second floor. And with that, so we have the pool structure, which is typical concrete shell, and then around that we have a wood deck, with gaps between the boards. And then we have the wooden stairway coming down to the grade. And of the what I'm calling the encroachment area, only about 60 square feet of that is the pool structure itself. The rest of it is the wooden deck. Again, this pool we've designed as minimal. It's not visible by any of the adjacent neighboring properties. And any drainage impacts, we have improved that with the stormwater system. That'll be an improvement to the entire property. So hopefully this description and the graphics gives you a better idea on what we're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. The engineer that designed the system is here today. He's not going to speak, but if you have questions about the stormwater system, he's prepared to answer them, Mr. Facemeyer.
Okay, thank you.
And my final comment is, as Paul indicated, the pool is elevated. Whether in this location, the pool will have to be built to the Florida Building Code, and there are specific standards for pool design and construction, both within the AE zone and the CZ zone under FEMA regulations. So when you look at that, it will be built to withstand and meet modern codes. Okay?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from staff?
Yeah, just one, Mr. Stillwell. Your client is offering a engineered stormwater system. To clarify, I think that picture is probably a little misleading. It looks like there's just a little swale, but it really is an engineered system, correct?
Amy, can you find that for me in the PowerPoint? There we go,
Amy.
right there.
Right. So that
Susan.
picture was a little
Susan. Susan.
that picture was a little misleading.
I'm sorry, yes, Susan, thank you.
That's all right. She keeps answering. It's okay.
We knew who
Amy,
you meant.
Susan,
That's all right, Harold.
whatever your name is. She's very important. We need to keep her, so stop. But okay, just wanted to clarify that is an engineered
Look,
system.
at least
It's
I'm
not
not trying
like
to use
that.
the PowerPoint today.
You actually gave up on that.
Yeah, I probably would do the same. All right, just wanted to clarify that is an engineered system, not really a swale like it looked like in
No,
that picture.
no.
Okay, thank you.
And again, the house is gutted, we put that in the application, and that is, that takes all the stormwater and it directs it into this system.
Thank you, which is not required if you didn't get a variance for the
Right.
pool.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
In past applications, the permanency of the water management system has always come up to be raised. What assurances do we have that this will be maintained like that?
You know, I've that's a good question, and I've thought hard about it, okay? And this is what I think, if I was on that side of the dais, I would suggest. Why don't you, and I assure you Mr. Hall has no problem with this, or the engineer, just a biannual report by the engineer of record that he has inspected the system in 2 years and then it's still operational. One-page report required. If they don't file it, then they're subject to the penalties of the code. But that would be, right now you got nothing. You know, you know that. You do these things, even on a 35-foot, a lot that meets the 35-foot with a swale and berm. They do the swale and berm. 3 years later, they've cut the grass, they mowed the grass, the swale's gone and the berm's gone. But if you were to impose that type of condition, and it's similar, very similar to what we do with the Water Management District on commercial projects for stormwater drainage, they're required to be annual type, semi-annual reports.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Thank you. Time to hear from staff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joe Hockadell, Principal Planner with Land Development. This application is requesting a 25-foot setback to a jurisdictional wetland line for the placement of a pool. As Mr. Stillwell stated, this is a pretty large piece of property, 23 acres in its entirety. However, the available upland area is only about a half an acre in size. So here you can see the flood zone. This is the surrounding land uses. Here's the existing house. The the existing house is about 2,041 square feet in size, and it does have a carport and screen porch that was built in the 1980s. Here's the proposed pool. It's about 774 square feet in size. It does utilize a portion of the existing deck. I guess it's not going to work for me this morning. Anyways, where the T of the house is, where the T of the house is on the southwest corner, it's using some of the deck there, and then it extends further out. So here's some of the building envelope and setback analysis. There is about 275 square feet of the proposed pool that is outside the buildable area, which you can see here. The buildable area is a little over 1,000 square feet in size, and the existing structure does take up a majority of that. However, there does appear to be some buildable area located to the southwest there, you can see. And so, with having a portion of the buildable area available for the pool and being able to utilize the existing deck, staff has found that this is not a minimum request and that not all the findings of fact have been found to be positive findings.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions from the applicant?
Joe, just real quick, did you receive any letters in favor of the application?
Let me check real quick. I don't think so.
What about the opposition?
I'm not aware of any public input.
I recognize you didn't read the staff report. There's a citation for comp plan consistency. It's section 3.16.1. Is that the 50-foot setback clause that you're speaking to?
It's on page 5 of the report. She's quoted the policy.
One moment, please. Oh, here we go. I found it. I'm sorry, what was the question about the 50-foot setback?
No, the citation in the staff report for plan consistency references the conservation element 3.16.1, I believe. Recall? I know you didn't get a report, so
Yeah, it does mention 3.16.1.
do you know what that clause says that you stand here and recall?
This policy 3.16.1 says that the county shall continue to implement wetland protection standards of the LDC. The county shall ensure that the following steps are taken in order when assessing proposed activities that may result in wetland impacts. 1, avoidance of wetland impacts. 2, minimization of unavoidable wetland impacts. And 3, compensation for wetland impacts through mitigation.
Okay, looking at the site plan, are there any wetland impacts at all here? Isn't it built all in the uplands?
It is all in the uplands, but it does not meet our wetland setback standards.
I appreciate that, but it is built in the uplands.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. That's all, thank you.
Okay.
And we stand corrected on the public input. Thank you, Ms. Scragg. I just handed you a letter that apparently is hidden in the packet. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, we do. We have one public input.
And was that in the affirmative, or was it supportive of the application or opposed?
It says that Andrew Hubb, the owner of Twin Rivers Marina, have no objections to
No
Mr. Hall's
objection.
request.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the board? Questions from the board? Thank you, Joe. At this time, I will open this hearing to the public for their comments. Anyone who would like to address the board that is in favor of this application, please come forward. Anyone in favor? Yes, sir.
I'm Miles Hall, the applicant, and my wife Colette. I just wanted to introduce myself and thank all you guys. I understand that I think many of you, if not all, are volunteers, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to read our application and consider it. We're from Atlanta and discovered Crystal River probably about a year and a half ago and just fell in love with the area and the beauty, and this property in particular really speaks to that for us. And it's our intention to, we have, I should have mentioned, we have 3 kids, a daughter Madeline who's 12, a daughter Bridget who's 11 just today, and then a son who's 5 years old. And they've been loving coming down and walking through the property and fishing and going, we went scalloping a couple of times, and we've really been enjoying everything Crystal River has to offer. So our thoughts for this property is it'll be a place for us to come with our kids to get out of Atlanta, out of the city, to enjoy everything that this area has to offer and its beauty, and that Colette and I eventually will retire down here on the property, and hopefully have the kids come back and remember the times they had growing up here. So, at any rate, I just wanted to introduce myself, and the pool is, I think something that we believe will enhance the property. Want to do everything right. We strongly believe in protecting the beauty and the environment that's here. So, again, we appreciate you guys considering it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of this application?
Good morning. I'm Mike Serwinski, environmental consultant, professional address 2716 South Lecanto Highway. Our firm did the wetland jurisdiction line on this property, and we also were involved somewhat with advising in terms of planning. The property, as you can see, provides quite a challenge. My input here is to let you know that a designed, engineered stormwater system plus the wetland buffer. Now, this particular home is surrounded by a wetland buffer. It's not directly on the water. That combination of the stormwater treatment and the buffer that's there will result in what's known as a net environmental benefit. Previous portions of the code required an environmental scientist actually to do an analysis and provide a environmental report to determine if there was a net environmental benefit. Since there is not currently a stormwater system, and this meets a 25-foot setback, no wetland impacts, the stormwater system in and of itself will result in a net environmental benefit by treating stormwater on the property that is currently untreated from the home itself. So I'm in favor of approving this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in favor of this application? Anyone else in favor? Anyone opposed to this application? Anyone opposed, please come forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public portion of this hearing and return the hearing back to the board for discussion and possible action.
Mr. Chairman, could we have the pool designer talk to us a little bit again?
The engineer?
The pool designer, yes.
Pool, okay, Paul?
The landscape architect.
The landscape
Landscape
architect.
architect, yes.
Sir, what was in your various iterations to produce this design, was there any consideration given to rotating the orientation of the pool counterclockwise to align more closely, perhaps not exactly, but more closely with the existing 35-foot setback?
Yes, we did, and that's a good point, because you look at the area in blue, you would think if you just rotated it, there would be even less impacts, but the fact is we would not be far enough away from the septic tank and the septic system. So that's why it's in the orientation that we propose.
Can you go to one of the other site plans to show the septic better?
I see, but it is an elevated pool, that's correct?
Yeah, but the structure, that's correct. The base of the pool will be at ground level, of course, so.
No, it's still the PowerPoint, but, oh yeah, you're right, Mr. Gibbs.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Other discussion?
Yeah, so typically, anything that's not consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development code and the findings of facts, I would mostly side on the side of staff, but this particular case, it's almost a 24-acre parcel, 275 square feet. That isn't really affecting the wetlands, and we've had multiple conversations with Mr. Zerwinski here, or, I'm not going to say conversations, but just educational moments to let us know. I mean, this particular property is surrounded by wetlands all the way around it, so In my opinion, I think it's a minimal request. It's a small area of the pool deck. Most of it is within the footprint of what's allowable. You know, I like the term net environmental benefit. I wrote that down. I'm going to use that in the future. Thank you. So I'm in favor.
Mr. Chairman, I did want to let you know that we have some conditions prepared if the board wishes to approve this.
Okay, would you like to read them, Joe?
Yes, sir. Number one, the pool and pool deck must maintain a 25-foot setback from the jurisdictional wetland line as outlined on the site plan received by Land Development Division, date stamped July 1st, 2021. 2, an appropriate stormwater management system acceptable to the County Engineering Division is required to be installed at time of permitting. 3, erosion control measures shall be installed to protect water bodies, wetlands, and/or adjacent properties before starting land disturbance activities as per Citrus County Code Section 42-172C. And 4, a tie-in survey demonstrating the maintenance of the required minimum 25-foot setback to the jurisdictional wetland line must be submitted to and approved by Land Development Division within 30 calendar days of establishing the pool.
I would also like to add, at the suggestion of the applicant or the applicant's counsel, that we add a biannual report, engineering report, that indicates the engineered stormwater system continues to remain in place and functional.
Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Sure.
Like, I want to know what Ms. Coutu has to say about something like that, and how does that, because I know Ms. Lynn beats us over the head constantly with these,
Well,
like
she's not here today.
right, but it's left an impression. You can see the marks.
Yeah.
How does something like that, like, how would that get reported? Who's going to look at that? Is that
Right. He suggested the applicant's engineer. My one concern with that is if they don't do it, then what? Can we go out there and then send them the code and say you have to tear down your pool? I mean, nobody wants to do that. So I understand the intent. I'm just trying to wrap my head around a way to make them do it if they don't. They sell it to the next person and they don't want to do it anymore. Then what? We don't have that hammer. So I think it's well intended, but I think we're going to have to work a little bit on that one. Yeah.
case study?
Who would receive such a report?
It wouldn't be an engineered report. It would be a report from the engineer saying that the stormwater system is still functioning. And then we could put some kind of wording in there that if this cannot be supplied, the application will be null and void, and the proposed structure will need to be removed or something like that. It's awful. I don't want that, but that's all I can think of. Off note, I'd add guttering because I did offer that. So let's add guttering to that stormwater system condition. But that's my one concern is, okay, great, sounds good. Now what happens when they don't do it?
Mr. Stillwell.
So, if I do a commercial project out here and I hire local engineering and they do a stormwater system and they get a Swift Mud permit, they fill out a form and send it to Swift Mud that says it's working, okay? So that's what I have in mind, that, you know, of course we're gonna send it to Ms. Coutu because she gets everything, you know? Start at the top. We could send it to Susan, but, you know.
She doesn't want it either. What happens to Swift Mud if you don't do it?
They write you, they have a pretty good computer system, or tickler system, as us lawyers like to refer to it as, and you get a letter back saying you got 30 days to provide this, and then you start getting the fine letters, and then they start revoking your permit.
Yeah.
And
we
that's
don't have
what
that.
they do. That's
Right.
under 120 Florida statutes. But in this particular case, if we don't do it and you notice us, then walk down the hall and give it to code enforcement.
Yeah, null and void isn't going to matter. You know, it would have to be something drastic, like you either have to provide it or install it or remove the pool. But we can
Well,
come up with some kind of test.
If we don't do it, then the fine's $100 a day, you know?
Well, yeah, I don't want to have you guys be code special masters or something, but I get the idea. We can try it for this case, and then Ms. Lynn can beat me over the head after the meeting.
Knowing that our staff doesn't have the enforcement ability that Swift Mud has,
Right.
it's a kind gesture, and I'm willing to accept that and try it. If, county council says otherwise, well,
Right.
she can scold us next time.
Right, we don't have an enforcement arm in our section
No, and
in any way, and that.
we all recognize that.
Yeah, so, I mean, would something be like, if the application would be null and void and the structure would need to be removed, if it cannot be complied with, I would hope by then they would be fixing their stormwater system rather than tearing down their pool. Nobody wants
Well,
that.
I would think that the first, step to remediation would be that they fix the stormwater system.
Right, and we just don't have a really tough hammer, but, we can try it for one and give it a shot.
If ever there was an application where you want to try this, it would be the Hall application, okay? Both of them are professionals. Both of them are committed to the community, and I'm sure they're gonna honor that. So that gives you a template.
What would happen when they sell the property?
It runs with the land. The variances run with the land.
Right, the biannual report, it's part of the conditions, so
Yeah,
that.
it goes, yeah. And
Like,
that's,
okay, so I'm in real estate, like,
So
how do I
you're-
disclose that to the next buyer?
yeah, you have to disclose it.
How would I know, though? How would I know? Because I know that I know where to look for it, but the typical real estate agent, they don't know there's something like that, and then it gets sold.
No, it's not on the agent, okay?
It's
on
definitely
the owner.
buyer beware.
Owner, okay? You know the residential disclosure standards as a realtor. If I, the owner of the property, know something, to wit, I have termites, you have to disclose it. To wit, I have a sinking issue, I have to disclose it.
Right.
And if you don't, then you know the consequences. So the same thing applies with this variance. I got the variance to the pool, I'm disclosing to you, you have to, and I'm taking the realtors out of this. This is owner to seller to buyer under
Right.
the Florida law. Now, the realtors, they compound the issue, but the legal standard is on the owner and the buyer.
Or alternatively, perhaps, instead
we
of
could
submitting it to us every other year, they could record it every so many years, and then it would show up in the public records.
Well, that's
And-
not a bad idea altogether.
And
that's
then
a
we
whole
wouldn't be
different-
reviewing something, but it would be there in the public records available for buyers, and it doesn't have to be every other year. It can be longer or whatever.
But the typical realtor doesn't do a record search. Not like
It
that,
would-
not
but
like
it's-
you're talking
It
about.
wouldn't come up in a title search either, though?
It will come up in a title search if you record it.
If it's recorded like that, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know that a lot of title agents would say, oh, hey, just by the way, they would look at that and go, something's kind of weird with this property. I don't know. I've never seen this before. That's why, and the reason I'm asking and the question is because now we're talking about something.
It's not the title agent, it's the underwriter, okay? What the title agent does is he gets the order, okay? He sends it to his underwriters. They do the search. When you get Schedule B3 on that title policy, anything that's in the public records recorded is going to be listed there. So you get your title opinion, you send it to the buyer and say, here's the title opinion. He's going to go to Schedule B3. He's going to see Citrus County Variance 12, recorded at OR book, page book. Now he's on legal notice.
Yeah, I get that. I understand
And
that part of it.
frankly, whether it's a conditional use, a variance, a PUD, recording that in the public records is not a bad idea at all. And if you want
That's
us
the
to
first time
record-
he's ever said that for something I've said, so we have it on tape now.
If you want to make us record this in public records, we'll pay the $20 recording fee. Okay?
Thank you.
I just think that the discussion that we're having right now is part of the whole discussion that we continually have.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, we're talking about this particular property right now, but
It's a broader discussion.
yeah, right, it's a countywide discussion.
And we can schedule something like this with the county attorney for a future meeting and go into more depth, since this is obviously a concern with us.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Bass.
I have to disagree with Mr. Bramlett regarding the impact. It is minimal, but again, it still violates our regulations. Earlier, the applicant said that they could not rotate the pool because it's too close to the septic. Well, the septic can be moved. A little more money for the owner, but I would prefer seeing the pool rotated to even reduce the impact even more so. So based on the existing application, I'm not going to vote in favor of this proposal.
Thank you. Other comments from the board?
I think that the applicant has expressed and was shown that he's trying his best to conform or come close to conforming. And I think they've gone through a lot of expense in that regard, and I will be in favor of this application.
Thank you. I have been one that's been staunchly opposed to many of these waterfront setback applications. However, in this case, I agree with Commissioner Bramlett that the applicant has demonstrated a sincere desire to protect stormwater runoff by agreeing to construct a stormwater system, engineered stormwater system. So I will be voting in favor of this. Other comments? Carol? Commissioner Scragg? Thank you. Other comments?
The only thing I want to make sure and be clear for the record is that it's not the fact that there's an engineered stormwater proposal on this particular, because almost 95% of the applications that we get that come in front of us, they propose engineered stormwaters, not just berm and swales. It's the fact that this property is almost 24 acres and that it's surrounded by a very large wetland area, that I know that any immediate runoff is not going to run off directly into the river and feed with the nitrogen and whatever, all the other stuff that comes from the fertilizers.
It's so secluded. When I did the site visit, I really had to look for it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not, you don't just drive by this property and say, oh, there it is. You know.
Yeah, there's plenty of buffer.
Fortunately, county staff puts out the sign that says, here it is.
Mr. Chair, for the purpose of a motion,
Commissioner Bramlett.
the Planning and Development Commission finds application number V-21-12 consistent with the Citrus County Land Development Code and is in keeping intent with the policies and procedures of the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan, and that this board approves with the conditions of the application based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition with the following conditions. And then, so we have the 5 conditions, the 1 condition, stormwater management, add the guttering information to it. And then I'm sort of up in the air about the biannual report. If that's what's going to make you guys, the rest of you guys, feel a little comfortable with it, then I'm okay to add it, because really I don't know that there's much of an arm to do anything with it. And then also, along with that biannual report, maybe the recording like Mr. Stillwell mentioned.
I think this would be a good test case for that. And as the county commission continues to debate this topic of waterfront setbacks, maybe this will be part of that future discussion.
So I'm okay with adding those as the conditions of part of my motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Bramlett. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Roy's second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
We have a nay by Commissioner Stone and Commissioner Bass. Motion carries. Time has arrived for hearing on CPA AAPUD 21-11.
CPA-AA-PUD-2111 Clark Stillwell for Damron Family Trust. This request is to amend the future land use from low-density residential to general commercial and heavy industrial, and amend the Land Development Code Atlas from low-density residential and professional services / office to general commercial and heavy industrial with a planned unit development. This is an aerial view of the subject property. It's outlined here in the teal blue color. This is a view of the property from West Norville Bryant Highway. Looking west on Norville Bryant Highway. And looking east. Looking across Norville Bryant Highway. And in the master plan as submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Good morning again. I'm not going to repeat my name and address for the record. This particular application deals with two parts, a G-Flume and LDC Atlas amendment, and a PUD on a portion of the property, the southerly portion. The proposed changes go from PSO and single-family low-density residential into general commercial along the highway to a depth of 500 feet, and behind that in industrial classification. The PUD on the industrial classification of 46 acres approximately is for open storage, consistent with the existing use to the west by LKQ. So let's, Miss Susan, thank you. Here's the aerial. You can see the subject property. Couple quick points. There's a drainage retention area right in the middle of the property. The history on that is when they expanded 486, the county wanted to put the drainage retention area right there along the highway, and the Dameron family moved that piece back off the highway, and the drainage retention area is exclusive as to the county and also the property owner. So the Dameron family retained the right to share drainage in that piece. To the west is the current LKQ facility, and you can see their operation along County Road 486, and then the storage area right behind it. And then you can see the properties to the south. Now today with me to assist is I have Ms. Avis Craig. The engineer who did the site plan is here, and we have the gentleman from LKQ, both who are going to speak about their operation. I do have my clients. Mrs. Dameron, thank you for coming very much. We appreciate it. She has lived on this property 95 years, long time. Long time. All right, let's go. So this is the G-Flume map, and we've outlined the piece, and you can see it's pretty much all low-density residential, but it abuts up to the industrial property for LKQ, and to the north, across 486, you can see the planned development for Pine Ridge. That's the district, well, how they do it, that pebbled yellow. Okay. This is the proposed changes. You can see the GNC to 500 feet, and then you can see the industrial to the south. This is the existing Land Development Code Atlas map. It has a chunk of PSO, which is a commercial type use, and the balance is low density residential. Again, industrial to the south and to the west, and the residential to the south. Thank you. And then same map, same thing, same for the LDC Atlas proposal. Okay. This is the Abutters Land Use Map. You can see we designated the YMCA, and we've shown the Citrus County School Board. There's a letter from the school board, I believe, in the application as to this from Mr. Dixon. I can tell you that I spoke with the board of directors personally of the Y, and they have no objection. The little blue piece at the bottom that says vacant, that's highlighted, the applicant, Dameron family, also owns that piece. So you can see a majority of that southern line is currently owned by the applicant. All right, if you look at, no, go back. A little quick there, Susan. If you look at the LKQ piece, just south of that, you can see that Florida Department of Transportation has acquired 3 of those lots as part of the County Road, Suncoast Parkway extension to County Road 486. I've reached out to the other vacant pieces about whether or not they had been contacted by FDOT. I have to assume, looking at that, what has occurred to date in the public records, that for sure at least 2 of those lots are going to be blocked by FDOT before this is all said and done. And the basis for that is, you'll see in the PowerPoint, the proposed right-of-way for the Suncoast expansion. Okay. The code has a special section for open storage, and it has specific requirements that are set forth. And let me find them. You guys have thrown me for a loop this morning when you approved that variance. All right, I'll get there. But it's 200 feet off of residential and 75 feet off of a non-residential district. Compared to if you had an industrial piece of property that was abutting a residential district, it would be a type D buffer with a wall, and the approximate amount would be 25 feet. So for this particular use, that 75 feet and the 200 feet is unique to the use in question. Okay. Next. All right. It occurred to me that you, like I, have probably driven by this piece of property 1,000 times. And you've looked and said, well, look, there's LKQ. And you just never knew exactly who they were or what they are or what they do. So I've incorporated this. A lot of it's out of their PowerPoint. The representatives are here, and they're going to speak to it. But you can see they were formed in '98. They have 1,700 locations, 31 countries, 51,000 employees, locally 130,000 square feet of warehouse operations, 150 employees. What is triggering this, and you'll see it later on in the presentation, is in the 90s, they expanded to the west, and they added an additional 5 acres of property. That's going to be gone when they extend the Suncoast Parkway. So they're losing their capacity. So what we've tried to do is bring that capacity for open storage over to the east onto the dam run property, not only to make up the 5 acres that they lost, but to provide them a long-term storage area. So, next one, please. Code requires a wall. This is the existing wall that was built to code when they expanded, and that's what they'll build on the south property boundary line, and they'll also build that wall on the east property line for that portion that is residential. The east property line has some PSO to a depth of 400 feet, and then southerly down to the corner, they will have installed this wall, and it's shown on the site plan. Next picture, please. All right, so this is the Suncoast Parkway and the proposed extension. This is off the FDOT maps, and it comes out just to the west of the LKQ facility in Pine Ridge Boulevard intersection with 486. All right, let's go. This is the map of that extension, and you can see directly behind the LKQ facility is a stormwater drainage retention area. Those are the lots that FDOT has required. And you can also see that the roadway there, Avis will speak to this, is going to be terminated. They'll put it in a cul-de-sac, and then you can see the drainage retention, that little strip of blue on those lots that are just south of the southwest corner of this piece of property, the dam run piece of property. Okay. This is the site plan. The drainage area that we spoke to earlier in the elevation of it basically prohibits it won't work for drainage. Mr. Wilburn can speak to that. So what we've done here is we've designed the stormwater drainage system to be along the north boundary, and then we've put the storage aisles down to the south. And then you can see the setbacks that have been imposed. I would tell you that, and the LKQ people can speak to this, they've never had a complaint about their operation. And you'll be impressed, I hope, with the environmental constraints that they put on themselves to make this work. The site plan does ask for a deviation in the corners from the setback up there for that small piece. Basically, if we left the front piece into that residential district, that 200-foot setback, the length of the property, would really take away the long-term capacity of this project. So what we have done is we've changed that portion into GNC. That is an arterial road. It is in the planned service area. It is served by Central Water and Sewer. It has no environmental constraints, and it meets all the tests necessary for that type of land use GNC on an arterial roadway. And there's 5 criteria in the plan. We've discussed them in the past many times, and they meet those. Okay, next one. None? You sure? All right. So Avis is going to talk about plan concurrency, consistency. That's her job as a professional land use planner. The engineer's here to discuss the site plan. The gentleman from LKQ are both here, and they're going to discuss their operation. Someone who's going to speak briefly about, doesn't want to, but she will, about the relationship with the neighbor in the southeast corner. If you have any questions of me, I'll be glad to answer them, or Avis. I haven't talked about concurrency, and I haven't talked about compatibility. Concurrency, we meet all the tests. It's in the backup material: Central Water and Sewer, solid waste, and stormwater. Compatibility, the definition, and we've talked about it many times, is long-term, the ability long-term of 2 uses to get along without prohibiting one of the other uses from being materially impacted. And so you have the LKQ facility that's been there forever, and you've had no complaints, and it's had no environmental complaints, and it's been next to the Damron property, which is residential, and they've had no issues. So you have a history here of this particular use, this open storage. They're stripped down cars, okay? You won't see them because of the wall that's required under the code to the south, and they don't make any noise, and they don't make any odor or anything along those lines. So the use, albeit it is labeled industrial, but the use is very low-key industrial, and that would make it compatible under the statutory test. So I'm done. Avis, are you ready?
I apologize for being so slow.
Take your time.
I am awaiting a date with a hospital to replace a hip, so in the meantime, we do what we have to do.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let me give this to your staff. And allow me to introduce myself, because there are a number of new faces at this table. My name is Avis Marie Craig. I am a planning consultant. Address P.O. Box 568, Lecanto, Florida. And I am a certified planner and have been since the late 80s of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I'm a life member of the American Planning Association and have practiced in this county since 1983, having both public and private sector experience. In fact, what brought me here, I was this county's first planning director, sitting in the chair where Joanna has to sit today, many moons ago. And from there, I went on to be a partner in a local engineering company, and from there, became involved in the real estate development industry, working for the villages of Citrus Hills, and had the distinct pleasure of helping that organization bring Terra Vista out of the ground. So that's a little bit of background for the newcomers as to what I've done and how long I've been around. I only started when I was 5 years old. Before LKQ took over the operation, it was successfully run by the Dameron family from the 60s and 70s. In fact, 486, when they built their home, didn't even exist out there. You had to access it from 44, from roadways like Malin. So there's been a significant change over the years since the Damerons first moved out to that part of the county. And they and I'm going to speak a little bit of history because I think it's important that we understand the type of owner that has operated this facility over the years, because we've really benefited from how they approach their business, and frankly, were concerned about appearance. And over the years, they actually received national awards from their industry. And I have to tell you, I had, like Mr. Stillwell said, I had never been onto the property until I became involved with working on the project. And I was, frankly, extremely surprised and pleased with what I saw. This is a long-standing corporate citizen who just last year paid over $100,000 annually in taxes. And so they've been doing that for decades. Some would suggest that's not a land use issue. But I can tell you, you have an economic development element, and economic engines and contributors should be recognized as vital to our future, and provision for existing businesses to be able to expand is also something we should be encouraging. Clearly, the current LKQ operation is maxed out on the lands that they currently operate from. The only way to grow this business is to expand its footprint, hence the application before you. Were this not approved and they were not allowed to expand, what would business naturally do? They would relocate to another site, or they would leave entirely. And that is not a desirable option. We have an opportunity to help an existing business continue to flourish. So it's beneficial not only to the business, but to the county as a whole. Because obviously if they're moving this larger footprint and expanding into that area, you can well imagine the tax base that comes with that. Now, I submitted a planning analysis, and it's referenced in Mr. Stillwell's application as Exhibit I, and I ask that that officially be entered into the hearing record as evidence in support of the application from a technical planning perspective. I have reviewed the staff's report, and it's focused specifically on identifying comp plan policies, and your staff has found it consistent with the comprehensive plan on pages 3 through 5 of their report, and I have done the same in my report with a minor few additional policies. But the bottom line is we both agree that the site is suitable for the intended use. It's located, as Mr. Stillwell explained, in the planned service area where industrial uses are to be encouraged. For industrial land uses, the comp plan policy requires service by central water sewer, and it does have it, and we've had confirmation from the utility department of the ability to serve. The site is located on one of our improved 4-lane highways with more than sufficient capacity to meet the project's needs, and there are no adverse impacts to public utilities or facilities. And the final point I'd make to you is how little development, especially residential, exists immediately adjacent to this site. And that's an important consideration. In addition to consistency with the comprehensive plan, Mr. Stillwell referenced compatibility with the neighborhood. By definition, under Chapter 163.3164, Number 9, from the Community Planning Act of Florida, compatibility is defined as a condition where land use or conditions can coexist in relative proximity to each other in a stable fashion over time, such that no use or condition is unduly negatively impacted directly or indirectly by another use or condition. Now, this application's master plan, Mr. Stillwell described to you what it's comprised of. Yes, it has specialized setbacks, but more importantly, it has extensive buffers. And the offset behind that 500-foot commercial corridor is another means by which we control the aesthetics and the buffering of the actual use where the storage of vehicles will happen. So let me just say that there are visual and aesthetic controls built into a PUD, and that's exactly what I have total confidence that this operation will operate within the purview of that process. There is one thing that I think Mr. Stillwell mentioned it, but I was a little surprised that the staff report didn't, and that is the proximity and relationship to LKQ to the Suncoast Parkway. Now, when you go to their website, it clearly explains, in fact, I was surprised in doing my research that it's scheduled to start construction in 2023. I don't think most people are aware of that per their official website. And so as a result, there's an extensive set of permitting documents in the DOT files. And looking at those, Mr. Stillwell went through a number of the points of the relative proximity, and with it literally terminusing at the west boundary of existing LKQ's operation, offset, and I don't know the exact distance, but some distance east of the Pine Ridge Boulevard entrance. So, and that you may have followed in the paper as to what's going on there. But let's spend a couple of minutes talking about the actual setback issue and the buffers. Traditionally, there are sections, different sections of the code that come into play. Normally, between any heavy industrial and residential property, the requirement is a 20, but preferred 25-foot wide D, which is your highest buffer criteria in the code. And that's as it should be, because traditionally heavy industrial has extensive potential impacts. But not so in this case. Literally, as you drive out there, it's very quiet. You can hear the birds. Yes, if you're close enough to the building, you might hear some noise from equipment operating up there along the commercial corridor where the other buildings of the operation exist, where the dismantling and things happen, but not out in the actual storage yard. And that's what this is. Now, if you consider that this PUD is proposing to provide 75 feet with, I might add, an 8-foot wall, not the traditional 6-foot that is part of your buffering standards, they are 3 times what a traditional buffer between a heavy industrial and residential would be. And for many years, can we go back to the aerial, which is number 2 of the PowerPoint presentation? If you look at that, you can just, well, this one is probably the clearest because it shows the existing operation, which is occupying literally almost up to the boundary. As best I can, I tried to quick measure it off the property appraisers, and it looks to be that there are vehicles stored within 25 and 30 feet from the boundary. The new plan is talking 75 feet. So you're talking 2.5 times what the current operation, where they've had no concerns or problems with any of their adjacent property owners, as Mr. Stillwell explained. And you can tell from your record that not a single adjoining property owner was in contact. That is obviously the highest priority, but that fact that the Suncoast is coming through along that south boundary, where we know they're going to be putting drainage, where we know that they may well buy additional properties yet still, and as Mr. Stillwell further explained, the road that you can just see that signature on the aerial running east-west, paralleling 486 in our south boundary, that's known as Ziggy Street. It actually gets cut off by the Suncoast Parkway construction. And so the access to those lands from the east will have to come from Malin, if you know the cut through, from Malin and Horace Island, from 486 down to 44. That's what the DOT has designed to allow continued access to the properties that will be east and, in this case, north of Suncoast. And then Ziggy to the west will go out, but it will be cul-de-saced to Knoll Road, which is also being reconstructed. DOT has plans to do a significant reconstruction of Knoll Road. So, by virtue of Suncoast, which has a significant impact on future land use, the historical rural residential character of that area to the south will change. It will not remain what it has been for the life of Citrus County. So when that is taken into account, we need to be proactive and be ready as the Parkway opens. And in fact, your Director of Growth Management told me as we were walking in here that the county is hiring expertise to look at all of the potential, the actual, because two of the interchanges will open, one this year, one next year, and as I told you with the construction schedule that DOT has, that could well be open by 2025. That's only 4 years from now. So we'll see what changes that brings to Citrus County. I have talked to you about the additional specific setbacks that are requested and why, in my professional planning opinion, this property, as it's planned for expansion, will provide the necessary safeguards, and I think that's why your staff has recommended approval. And so we certainly agree with that consideration and interpretation. And I would also say that I think that to do otherwise would be to put a burdensome restriction on the use of the land. There was some discussion in the report about, well, you can meet the 200-foot. Yes, and it would take out of play for the use over 40% of the land. And that, in my opinion, is not justifiable or reasonable. It certainly doesn't appear to be in the public interest. And so I hope that you will move forward with the recommendation that has been presented to you. I think it's a suitable and reasonable use of the land in this location. The extensive perimeter buffering goes far and away to protect anybody that may be proximate to it. And that's why the standards are there and why the PUD exists, so that it can take into account the types of conditions that are being proposed for a given site in the context of that particular use. And as I described to you, I would encourage you, I suspect LKQ would be glad to tour any of you if you're curious about it. So in my professional opinion, I agree with your staff that the application is consistent with the comp plan. It does provide compatibility through the reasonable application of buffering requirements pursuant to the Land Development Code, and it does not impact any public facility or utility. And so I would hope that you find it appropriate to recommend approval of this application to the Board of County Commissioners, subject to the 10 conditions outlined by the staff, which as a team we discussed and the applicant has agreed to. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have of me.
We'll hold the questions, Ms. Craig, until after
That's
everyone's
fine.
presented. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Before the folks from LKQ get up here, we had a pre-app with Mr. Sherman on this particular piece of property, I want to say 8 months ago or 6 months ago. It took that long to pull the application together. And what we committed to him then, and what he told us was one of the most important things that you have to commit to is there is no new access here to County Road 486 from the industrial district. So the new open storage areas will access into LKQ's existing facilities, and then they'll access onto County Road 486. And that was brought home to us in that pre-app, and the PUD complies with that. So that being said, gentlemen,
Hello and good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time today. My name is Robert Six, 1350 North Circus Terrace, Hernando, Florida, and I represent LKQ. I'm a district manager for the Southeast region. I oversee all of our wholesale operations throughout Florida. I've been with LKQ for 18 years and resided here in Citrus County for the past 8. I'd like to give you a little bit more of a personal overview of our business and what we do. I think a lot of people do know that we, sell used auto parts, but I don't think they realize all the extras we have to do on top of that. We are an eco-friendly company in the fact that we recycle everything on the automobile except for the air in its tires. Fluids are extracted indoors. And temporarily stored in appropriate containment systems. Fuel is often reused in our own equipment. Oil, wiper fluid, antifreeze are all sold to petroleum companies who then refine it and repurpose them for equipment. You think of like up north, they use the oil burners still, oil heaters. Tires are sold to recyclers who often you'll see them in playgrounds after they're ground up for miscellaneous projects. Regular batteries are sold back to the battery companies, and they're able to repurpose the lead. Hybrid batteries, which are increasing drastically, we can resell those. What we don't resell, we can repurpose. We have a factory in Texas that does remanufacture them. And then the car parts themselves. That's the heart of our salvage business. It's a cost alternative for the public. Those are either sold to a customer for reuse, or once they reach the end of their life, they're sold to a scrapper who then refines them for recycling, and where they go from there, it's usually overseas. Something a little bit more important to us, especially in recent years, is ESG. For anybody that's not familiar with ESG, it stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. And I'm going to read this quote from Forbes article. ESG investing is a strategy you can use to put your money to work with companies that strive to make the world a better place. As a publicly traded company, LKQ is no exception. And there is plenty of ESG reference in our investors page on lkqcorp.com. Folks, simply put, LKQ, we cannot afford to be non-compliant in these matters. It could impact us pretty severely, so we take this very seriously. Our local plant here in Crystal River is one of excellence. We have invested significant funds in our processing equipment and our containment systems, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we will continue to do so and invest as more innovation hits the market. Many of our nationwide plants were actually built around the Crystal River model because it's so clean and efficient. And because of its clean reputation, we bring a lot of internal and external guests here for facility tours, including our local and state leaders. We've done quite a few, not as of recently with COVID, but prior to COVID, it was we were doing one at least probably once a month. And we encourage you. We would love to have you all tour our facility as well. But it's not just the equipment that sets our LKQ facilities apart. We have daily, monthly, quarterly, annual inspections that we all have to do internally. Every LKQ facility, we hire a third-party contractor at least once annually to come in, inspect our operation, look for any environmental impacts or anything negative that could happen. Completely third party, so they're out to find the stuff for us. We are susceptible to EPA visits. We occasionally get a random visits, and to date, we've had a very clean slate. Additionally, we provide internal training with all of our employees. Some is online within our own system. Some of it's on the job training. But they're trained to prevent, notify, contain, and resolve any kind of a hazardous event. Every day the national vehicle count rises, right? There's more people, there's more cars on the road. Somebody has to process those vehicles. I would prefer it to be us. I've seen, I guess we could call it our competition. Most of them are getting to our speed, but I have seen some that don't really handle stuff the way we do. Our current footprint, as Mr. Stillwell pointed out, is maxed out, including the new warehouse that was built in 2012 when I first arrived here. This expansion will help us to grow and absorb those rising vehicle counts, but it'll also help us replace the 5-acre lot that we developed here recently that is being pretty much all taken by the Suncoast Parkway. Last but certainly not least, in addition to our already 150 employee base strong, we're expecting at least a 10 to 15% employee growth within the first couple years. But realistically, we're probably looking at more than that. We're thinking it might actually be 20%. That is all I had. I want to thank you again for your time today. I'm going to turn it over to Casey Ingram. He's our general manager at the plant. He's got his boots on the ground every single day. He's going to give you a quick but a little bit more detailed overview of our process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name
Morning.
is Casey Ingram, 8893 West Sula Lane, Crystal River. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of LKQ. As Bo said, I am the general manager. I've been with the company since '97. I was actually one of the original Damron employees before they merged over with LKQ. So, been at the operation a long time. What I'd like to do is give you guys a glimpse into our daily operation, give you a better understanding of what we do in our business. So we purchase end-of-life vehicles, whether they be a wrecked, crashed, a flooded vehicle, abandoned vehicle. The end-of-life vehicle, that's our specialty. That's what we deal with. We purchase these vehicles. They're transported to our facility in Crystal River. The day the vehicle is delivered to our facility, we actually inspect that vehicle, confirm it's the vehicle that we purchased. We also inspect that unit to ensure that it doesn't pose any potential environmental issues, leaks, stuff like that. Sometimes the wrecked vehicles can pose those potential issues, so that is something that we're sensitive to. We do keep a close eye on it. We inventory each of those vehicles once they arrive at our facility, and then we move it into our dismantling bays. It's actually a dismantling building, the new building that was built in 2012. We completely remove all the fluids from the vehicles at that point in time, and that's when we're going to harvest the greatest majority of the items, the quality items that are on those vehicles. Once all those fluids are removed from the vehicle, we actually store those on site. Double-walled storage containment is housed on site, so we keep an eye on those. Some of the fluids, as Bo said, like some of the washer fluid, we're going to reuse in our own vehicles. Some of the fuel we actually reuse in our delivery trucks. So none of it goes to waste. Once we've removed all the fluids from the vehicles and those remaining hulks are clean, we then store those hulks out in our yard operation. We generally keep those vehicles on site for around a 6-month time period. Gives us the ability to sell additional items off of those hulks before we crush them. Once we have harvested all the good items off of those vehicles, then we then move those hulks out of our yard, and we have one designated area at our facility where we actually crush those vehicles and get them prepared to go to a shredder. We prefer to use a shredder. A shredder is able to completely disassemble one of those vehicles, and no part of the vehicle goes unused. So every single item on that vehicle is able to be recycled. We take a very very proactive approach to the environmental side of it. Operators at the facility perform everything from daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly inspections, both internally. And as Bo said, we have a third-party vendor we use to come in and do a yearly site visit, scrub our operation from one end to the other, inside the building, our yard, no stones left unturned. They grade our location, same as they do every other location, and it's reported up to the management team. We spend a great deal of capital each year, as Bo said, ensuring that we are leading the industry with any of the environmental compliance issues. Every quarter, we take all of our defective computers, mercury switches, fluorescent lamps, ballast, all those are recycled. We have a national vendor that we have an agreement with. We have a shredding vendor that comes in every single month, and they're going to deal with excess paper and cardboard that are generated at the facility. Each of the vehicles that come in, the greatest majority of them, we're able to capture the Freon. That Freon is actually recycled. We actually ship that to a national vendor, and it's actually reused. As Bo said, LKQ has their own hybrid battery processing facility. Any of the batteries that we're not able to resell do go directly to our recycler. The hybrid batteries, we do pull all those at our time of dismantle. Their batteries are neutralized, and then they're housed for safety. As you guys are all aware, I'm sure there's some pretty potent amounts of energy stored in those, and it's definitely a hazard if not treated properly. So we keep a very close eye on it. All of our employees receive training. Training is completed both from a job-specific training to environmental compliance training before they start their first day, and then regular trainings continue throughout their career with LKQ. So, anybody have any questions at this time?
We'll hold questions until everyone's had a chance to talk.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Stillwell.
You ready? Sharon was reluctant, but she has personal knowledge of one factor, so she's going to speak just briefly. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Sharon Dameron Owen. I live on 4795 North Goldwood Terrace in Beverly Hills, which is Pine Ridge. Hold the mic?
Yeah, or just get a little closer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's better.
Is that better? My name is Sharon Dameron Owen. I live on 4795 North Goldwood Terrace in Beverly Hills, which is Pine Ridge. When my father passed away, my mother no longer wanted to live alone, so we moved off of the property into Pine Ridge so that she could live with us, and we had a home that was suitable for both of us. But we lived on the property for many, many years, 30 for me, more than that for my mom. I just wanted to let you know that there's a gentleman on the corner, it'd be this southeast corner, that we've known for years, William Langley, and he has property adjacent to our property, and he's always helped us out in many ways with our cows if we needed them, and we called and expressly told him about what we were going to be doing, and he had told us that he had no problem with the change, that he felt like after he saw the site plan, he felt like he was covered very well, and so he just wanted to relay that to y'all.
Thank you.
That's all, Mr. Fisher.
Okay.
That's all, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Unless
Stillwell.
you got questions of the engineer.
Not of the engineer, but ready for me? Yeah,
Ready,
okay.
we're going to hear from Joanna.
Yeah, just one. The deviation for the southern setback, the 200 feet for auto salvage, that's obviously intended for abutting residential properties. You expect to have noise, odor, even fluids with an auto salvage operation. But it sounds like your LKQ people were saying that you're not going to be doing noise there. There's not going to be odor detectable. You're not going to be having fluids in that 200-foot setback down to the south. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, ma'am. The code in section 3350 requires all of the, what I'm going to call the breakdown of the cars to be done 300 feet away from a residential property line. And that is done along those buildings in 486. What you have in the open storage area is the shell of a car. No tires, no engine, nothing, just the shell of a car that sits there. And then they do what they said they do with it. That south boundary line, as Avis said, a 200-foot setback would vitiate 40% of the developable area. You're talking about 13.11 acres of actual open storage in that area, of which that's compensating for the 5 acres that they're going to lose when the property to the west is condemned. Of that south property line residential, 1,320 feet is owned by the applicant. And then there's 3 more lots that are owned by FDOT. So those FDOT lots aren't going to be used for single-family residential. So 75% of the south boundary line will not be in residential use or is owned or controlled by the applicant. And as Avis pointed out, the existing LKQ setback is closer than the proposed 75 feet, and there's been a history of no issues with that. There'll be the wall, and there'll be the 12-foot mandated buffer per the code. So we're trying to provide to a good corporate citizen an ability to function long-term. That's why.
Understand. So just a 200-foot setback for the noise and odor. You're not going to be doing noise and odor in that area. We're not going to have fluids leaking into the residential area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I had, sir.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have one.
Commissioner Barris.
Out of curiosity's sake, how many vehicles will actually be stored on that new parcel? Or scraps, as you want to call it that.
Hulks is that.
Folks, just some idea.
That's above my pay level.
Above your pay grade?
Approximately 3,000.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
Well, just since you asked that, how many are stored currently there now?
Not enough. 1,400.
While you're up, I have a couple of questions. Can somebody, maybe you can't show this, but I'd like to see with a pointer where the fence would be and where your new hulks will be stored on this map. And this third question's got nothing to do with the application, but it's for Mike's information. How in the world do you inventory catalog these hulks to know where a 67 Chevy is that you need to get a part from?
So we have our own built system, and everything is cataloged. I mean, I could compare it to a grocery store. I mean, every part, everything inside has a tag, a barcode. Any of the hulks stored outside, we have to do cycle counts on a daily basis. So, you know, while those parts don't have tags, we do have to cycle count them to make sure, okay, the fender's there, the door's there, the glass is there. It's all cataloged. Each one has its own specific GUID number. That's I guess our terminology of a barcode. And we can, when a sales rep is looking in the screen, they can see exactly where that part is, and once that ticket's processed, the parts puller will get it. He knows right where to go, and it's a little different than the old mom and pop self-serve kind of operation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm dangerous.
This will be fun.
Joe couldn't work it either the day, the pointer.
Yeah, the actual pointer
Susan,
portion wasn't.
I blew it. Doesn't work?
We couldn't get the pointer either. It's Joe couldn't, and he's our expert, so.
Michael, approach. Fence starts here, it's in here, down to the corner. This is Mr. Langley, and then the fence goes north till it gets to the GNC boundary. And then this is the 1,300 feet that the applicant owns here, and then the FDOT parcels are right there. How's that for a pointer?
Excellent. Old school.
Old school, yeah. What was the other question, Mr. Facemeyer? Did I
No,
answer?
you answered my question. Basically, what I'm seeing is that the hulks will be stored more to the rear of the property as they currently are, and it'll be consistent with the current current operation.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the elevation maps, no one's gonna see them. Either south or north. On the south side, they'll have the fence, and on the north side, it's 500 feet plus the drainage retention areas, plus the vegetation, and plus the elevation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I got a question for Mr. Stillwell, or for anybody that might have an answer
Commissioner
for
Barnes?
us. The proposed diversion swell, can you explain what a diversion swell is, or refresh my memory?
The engineer is gonna answer your question.
I thought I got out of this. Mike Wilburn, local engineering. As mentioned several times, quite a few of those properties, and even additional properties south of the ones that have been discussed, have now been purchased by DOT. We believe that the other properties will be also. DOT's plans for that stormwater plan that you see, or the blue area kind of in the middle of the south property line, that is a historic basin. And so as of yet, we don't have geotechnical information to tell us the limits of that, but that is a conservative view of what that historical basin looks like. The reason the diversion swells are there and they're proposed is right now we don't know how much of that historical basin DOT is going to accept as theirs and how much they're going to want us to accept as ours. So we've just shown it in there preliminary at the moment, but until their design is done, we won't know. And our retention area that would be in that area will have to be a joint process because we're both going to share some of that historic drainage with DOT.
You have nothing on it yet, no drawings, no?
There's drawings, but their calculations are not complete, no.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stone?
I guess this might be a question for Mr. Six or Mr. Ingram, one of the two applicants. What are your hours of operation for your facility?
The operation is open. Generally, we have employees arriving at 6 a.m. on Monday morning. The main building up to the 486 side is going to be operational from 6 a.m. Monday morning until Saturday morning about 3 a.m. That is directly in that building itself. As far as the yard goes and the expansion would be considered, that would be a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. operation Monday through Friday only.
Okay.
So the warehouse, the main portion up front, that is busy pretty much 24 hours a day. However, out in the yard, it's half days.
Okay. I have another question, I guess, for the, not sure if it's for the engineer or, no, I'll hold up a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the board? Time to hear from staff.
Good morning.
Morning, Joe.
Joe Hockadell, Principal Planner with Land Development. This application is requesting to change approximately 72 acres from predominantly low-density residential to general commercial and heavy industrial with a planned unit development for the industrial portion of the property. The PUD will encompass approximately 46.44 acres. Here you can see the aerial of the subject property, and you can see the existing LKQ site is directly to the west. There's some mini storage a little further to the west. The YMCA is called out there with the school site located, proposed future school site located adjacent to that, with the drainage retention area located centrally of the subject property. It does have an easement that goes out to 486 for access. And so here is one of the most recent alignments that we had available for the Suncoast Parkway. And so here is the land use. Mr. Stillwell went through these already, so I'll go through them kind of quickly. This is the Atlas designation. You can see the PSO up in that upper left corner. I believe it was in 2014. And if this is approved, this is what the land use will look like, with the GNC up along Norval Bryant Highway and the industrial to the south. There are two existing single-family dwellings located on the subject property, and currently it is being utilized. There's cattle running on the property right now. It's mostly open with some tree cover. This is the access easement that goes from 486 to the drainage retention area, and a view of the existing single-family dwelling and the driveway back to the other one. So this is the master plan as provided by the applicant. They are requesting only open storage for auto salvage as part of the PUD. And as Mr. Stillwell stated, they are only taking access via cross access to the existing LKQ site to the west, which you can kind of see. This isn't working, or I would point it out, but you can see a connection on the west side there. They are requesting a few deviations from the Land Development Code. One of them being the landscape buffer requirement, and that is Section 5550 of the Land Development Code requires that an industrial land use has a Type D landscape buffer, both to residential and non-residential or commercial. And they are requesting a 15-foot Type C along the proposed boundary for the commercial that is part of this request, but they are providing a Type D buffer with an 8-foot wall along all the residential boundary. The other deviation they're requesting is for setbacks. Section 3350 of our Land Development Code is specifically for auto salvage junkyard operations, and it does have some very specific requirements in it. One of them is the 75-foot setback from any property line. and a 200-foot setback from a property line in a residential district. And so that's what they keep referring to on the southern property line. There's residential to the south. So they would have to meet that 200-foot on that side, which if you look at what it would be meeting those setbacks, this would be the general area. However, the properties to the south, as you've seen, are pretty large tracts of residential properties, some of them already owned by DOT. They are providing that 8-foot wall. They are providing a 25-foot type D landscape buffer. And as you can see here, they would have to redo some of their stormwater in order to fit this. So the property is located within the planned service area, and it is within a corridor planning zone. They do have access to central water and central sewer, and they can meet their concurrency requirements. The surrounding area, generally speaking, is a mix of industrial, commercial, and residential. And we have seen some non-residential applications changing to non-res land uses in this general area over the last 10 years or so. And having the plan unit development limits the development of the industrial site specifically only for open storage for the auto salvage. And so the findings of fact have all been found to be positive findings, and we do have suggested conditions if you want to recommend approval.
Thank you, Joe. Does the applicant have questions for staff?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Does the board have questions for staff?
Joe, can you go back to the regular site, please?
Thank you, Joe. At this time, I'll open this hearing to the public for their comments and input.
Good morning, members of the board. I have to say, good morning to the Dameron family. I mean, I feel like I'm almost meeting royalty in Citrus County. I mean, you've been here so long. I'm from Miami, and the two ladies that made Miami what it is today were Julia Tuttle and Murray Brickle. So I looked at the front row, and I saw Murray Brickle and Julia Tuttle. Anyway, I also feel like...
excuse me, sir. Please state your name.
I'm sorry, I'm
for the record.
Pete Cucuro. I'm from Pine Ridge, representing the Pine Ridge Property Owners Association. Today with me, I have Mark Dupuy, Bill Hunter, and Mike Perry, the president. They've asked me to speak first. We in Pine Ridge have been, I guess battling is the best word, the whole notion that there would be a Suncoast Parkway interchange at County Road 46. Mr. Stillwell, we found out, is also a prominent member of the community. But back in December, we were at an MPO meeting, and we recognized that Mr. Stillwell was supporting the Suncoast interchange at 46. It wasn't until we saw this connection, if you will, to the Dameron property, to the LKQ, and to the Suncoast that we kind of put it together in terms of that the Suncoast interchange could and would support the Dameron LKQ expansion. So now we're seeing a bigger picture, and we come to you today as a board to see what we see as the bigger picture. The bigger picture being that 486 is the southern boundary of Pine Ridge Estates. It's certainly going to be the highway to what would eventually be the center of Citrus County. We think that FDOT and the county have done a wonderful job with 46 and the way it's been developed. And then we see the snapshot of now, and we compare that to 10, 15, 20 years from now. So we know that there is going to be significant development along 46. And we want it, and I think we all want it to be the very best it can possibly be. In the middle of that, continued refined development would be what is now LKQ and what would be the expanded LKQ. It just doesn't seem like it would lend itself to being in the center of Citrus County 10, 15, 20 years from now. It also, at the moment, is a major concern for us with the number of vehicles, and I say vehicles, I'm talking about commercial vehicles and trucks. They already travel through Pine Ridge to some degree. We know in doing our due diligence that there's any number of trucks being complained about as it relates to traffic in and out of LKQ on 46. So this is an issue that would only be exacerbated as time goes on. And so we know that this is one of the best staffs in terms of putting what I would call dotting the i's and crossing the t's. It just seems to me that sometimes everything gets ahead of itself, because what should really be happening is the overview of what this could mean for all of Citrus County, not only now but going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was he opposed? Was he opposed? Couldn't tell.
I did, that's what I got.
Morning. It's a pleasure to speak to the board. It's my first time here.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Mark Dupuy. I'm a Pine Ridge resident now for 8 years. My wife of 49 years and I moved here 8 years ago. And I think I can offer a bit of a unique perspective for the board to consider. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I graduated with honors from an engineering school, rated #1 in the country at the time. I have an MBA. I've been able to enjoy a lot of jobs. One of the jobs I had was world manager of development for a $2 billion company, where I had people from the US, North America, Asia, and in Europe reporting to me. In addition to doing that job, I worked 20 hours a week with a staff of 6 people to write a global strategy, a business plan, a mission, a vision statement, and a business plan. I've always been impressed with LKQ since I've seen what they've been doing. I watch them, and I guess what's unique is that I work out almost every day at Citrus Hills, at Bella Vita. I drive by LKQ twice a day. Over 8 years, that's 5,000 trips past LKQ. I appreciate what the LKQ people have said today, and I do believe that they have a very controlled interior office and company and procedure, and they do everything they can. One of my concerns is that if they're going to essentially quadruple in size, it's also meaning that there's going to be 4 times as many trucks bringing cars that we've been told are end-of-life vehicles. Yes, they do reclaim the fluids once they get inside their property, but I do believe, at least my impression is, that these are private vehicles, private trucks, and I think strategically that's probably a good move for LKQ, so they don't have the responsibility for dripping fluids coming into the facility. I've seen many trucks waiting to get in to their slot, parked in the median, parked on the side of the road, and I see that these cars are ruined. They're bad crashes, and I'm sure that they're leaking vehicles. As a matter of fact, we've been told that they leak vehicles. So one major consideration is to think about, that I'm going to offer, is to look at what impact that may have on us, on our local community. Not to mention the traffic increase with those types of vehicles, but I think that that's an important thing to consider. There's also one of my colleagues is going to speak about Holder Industrial Park, which is 500 and some odd acres of storage area that's close by. Perhaps that's a consideration for LKQ in the future. Yeah, the YMCA, my wife and I are charter members. We joined before it was built, and I can see why the YMCA would not object. They're right across the street, but they're also a significant recipient of a gift. My understanding is a couple of $1 million to help build that building, and I wouldn't think that they would oppose this situation. Because
Can you please conclude your
Beg your
remarks?
pardon?
Your
Sir?
time has expired. Can you conclude your remarks?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Bill Hunter. I live across the highway in Pine Ridge. Our comprehensive plan guarantees this property owner's right to request this zoning change. These types of changes are usually motivated by an owner's desire to develop something that isn't allowed today. Approval of rezoning is not a right. Rezoning should benefit the entire county. Yes, the existing auto salvage has been there for decades, and expansion will likely benefit the business interests involved. But despite the excellent overview that you've seen today about how well LKQ manages their business, the question for you to answer today is rezoning in the best interest of Citrus County? Our future land use map and land use districts protect the property owner's development rights, while at the same time protecting neighboring property owners and surrounding communities from incompatible uses. In this case, the surrounding residential and neighborhood commercial zoning has been in place for decades. This request is to upzone residential into heavy industrial in an area that has seen steady growth in residential and neighborhood commercial. It has also seen a decline in heavy industrial activities like mining and extraction. Yes, auto salvage has existed here for decades, but is this the appropriate place for industrial expansion? About 8 miles away is the 557-acre Holder Industrial Park, a sub-area master plan created specifically to provide, and I'm quoting, a strategically located industrial park location within Citrus County. That's from our comp plan. 2 days ago, the BOCC approved its state legislative priorities for 2022. Topping the list was economic development, with a $6.2 million request to the state legislature for design and funding of infrastructure at the industrial park property the county owns adjacent to the Inverness Airport. This commission is the place where a thorough understanding of the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code guides debate about the best interest of Citrus County. Is it in the best interest of Citrus County to expand industrial zoning in the middle of growing residential areas? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other comments?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike Perry. I'm the current president of the Pine Ridge Property Owners Association. First, I'd like to thank you all for your service. I know it sometimes is thankless. You've heard from the really smart guys in our community, several of them. The only thing I really want to add is I do think that LKQ has been a good neighbor. I think they provide a valuable service. But we also have some rules, and I know that they can change, and you have the ability to do that. The one that concerns me the most is the 200-foot setback. I'm just not sure. If you're in business and you know that setback exists, wouldn't your planning work around that? Sure, you're going to ask for it, but is it really that necessary? I just asked the commission to take a good close look at that piece of the request. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? More public input?
Good morning. I'm Don Taylor, and I am president of the Economic Development Authority for Citrus County. And it's been a while since I've been before this commission, so just by way of who we are, it's a 501c3 organization known as EDAC, and we support industrial development in the county, commercial development, to provide good paying jobs here in the county. We work closely with the county. I work with David with economic development, so that's kind of who we are. So this morning, I see it as you have the opportunity here to approve this application to create some more good paying jobs here in Citrus County, to move this application along to the BOCC. And LKQ obviously has been here a long time. Before that it was Dameron, and providing good paying jobs here in the county. And typically from an economic development standpoint, over 70% of the jobs that are created in a community come from the expansion of existing businesses. And this is a prime example of that, to expand their business and create more good paying jobs. And what this does also, this company takes their reclaimed parts and sell them outside of the county. And then that brings income into the county to produce more jobs, for expansion, for tax-based expansion and things like that. The employees spend their money locally to support small businesses, so it's in this cycle. There's a lot of counties that would love to have this business in their county. So what I'd like to do is ask you to approve this application, to move it forward, and create these jobs in the county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
Morning, David Yaklik, Economic Development Director for the county. I've had the pleasure of meeting out there on site recently, a couple months back with the county administrator. Saw firsthand the pride that is exhibited by the company, its leadership, and the employees. You know, again, what's been stated, it's a long-standing company, and you know, it's hard enough to get a company to stay, 5-10 years, let alone almost 23, or well, really 23 at this point. And the fact that you can argue one of the original green companies, here we are on the Nature Coast several times this morning, environment, eco, nature, preserving have all been used and referenced, and certainly you've got a company that is at the forefront of that. Again, one thing I've always talked about in the short time I've been here, I started in January, was balance. We have a big tourism industry, we have a heavy service sector industry, but what we've always lacked and we always wanted to see improve was on the industrial side, the manufacturing, the distribution, the logistics. LKQ presents a lot of that. You have the distribution, you have the disassembly, you have the green element. You obviously have much like the Damerons, you have a long-standing family that has been a fabric of our community for quite some time. And obviously one of the concerns with truck traffic or whatever, I know from talking to those that have dealt with LKQ, if there's ever an issue with trucks being in medians, whatever, and it doesn't happen regularly, you're talking, isolated incidents. It's been quickly addressed. There's been no issues, and those that brought the issue forward have been pleased and said that they love continuing to work with the company. So with that said, I certainly want to support anything we can do to support these type of companies. We're all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, board members. Thank you for your service to our community, for no pay and probably lots of aggravation, but somebody has to do it, and y'all do it well. Josh Wooten, President, CEO of the Citrus County Chamber of Commerce, and we're here to speak in support of this project. We are excited to hear about the possible expansion. Obviously, if we can get 3 more halts on the property, then that's going to be a lot more employees that need to dismantle them. As has been stated, this is an award-winning company in the environmental arena. As Dave said, we are the Nature Coast. Sometimes when you have to make these decisions, you're relying on people and you hope they're going to do what they say they're going to do. But my nearly 40 years experience in this community is when the Damerons say they're going to do something, you can take it to the bank. And my experience too with LKQ is when they say they're gonna do something, you can take it to the bank. So I think it's a win-win for the community. I think it does benefit the tax base. I think it gives our citizens an opportunity for better paying jobs, which we desperately need. It diversifies our economy, and as I can't stress enough, when they say they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it right. So we would urge you to support this project.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten. Anyone else who would like to address the board? Anyone else who would like to address the board on this issue? Seeing no one, I will close the public portion of this hearing and allow the applicant to offer any rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to briefly update you on the status of County Road 486 and the traffic. And these numbers are found in Exhibit J, I believe, in your application. The current 2020 traffic counts for 486 reflect 8,375 average daily trips per day on 486, right there by LKQ. Now that's 8,375 trips per day over a 24-hour period. The average traffic count at peak hour, which is 8:30 to 9:30, 4:30 to 5:30, is 795 trips. It's a divided 4-lane arterial road. For it to go to level of service C, it could handle over 18,000 trips, average daily trips per day. So the road has more than sufficient capacity for any new development, let alone LKQ. But the significant thing in the traffic counts is 6% of the traffic is trucks, according to the county's
6% is?
Trucks.
Trucks.
So you distinct minority. And I just want to say, as far as the land use changes and the comprehensive land use plan, the land use designations for the Dam Run property, it's 73 acres more or less, were made in 1990. Their PSO was changed just briefly, as Joe pointed out, but essentially they were made in 1990. They were based on the mapping standards at that time. They were based on a county that had approximately 75,000 people in it. The county population has doubled. So the statutory test, the legal test, is it consistent with the plan? The plan is a living document. You change it as your county grows, and we have the opportunity to grow a good company here. So we would ask that you approve the application. This setback debate, 200 feet, as discussed, is going to have no impact on Pine Ridge one way or the other. That's on the south boundary. As we've pointed out, 75% of the south boundary is not going to be used for residential development. If you go across the street and look at Pine Ridge, you're going to find that all of those residential lots are owned by one person, Gulf to Lakes. And they've been noticed. I've talked with them, and I think their non-appearance here speaks volumes. The most directly impacted person in Pine Ridge, and they're not here.
Thank you.
One way or the other. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I will return this hearing to the board for discussion and possible action. I see some pages turning.
My stuff was answered. Just
Okay.
checking that.
Any other, no questions, no comments, no discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say the staff report is very thorough. The presentation's been pretty thorough. I'm in favor of the application. The deviations are fine with me. The 200-foot setback, I understand the difference between the storage of and the dismantling of the units. I think the industrial designation sort of has a little bit of a negative connotation to it. When you think about it, you hear industrial, but the actual use of what they'll be utilizing the majority of that industrial property for really is more just kind of like an outdoor storage area. So I'm in favor of the application and the suggested conditions.
Can I hear from Mr.
Commissioner Stone.
Mr. Stillwell? Who's occupying the GNC portion along the Norval Bryant? Is that LKQ as well, like they are doing
No, sir.
property to the the
Yes,
west.
sir. What we did here was, we said, okay, LKU has to expand. And, so we figured out the appropriate area. You know, the normal commercial depth in Citrus County is 400 feet. And at times that's become, problematic, for development. So, we made the call to go to 500 feet in depth. It's gonna be GNC, it's gonna be vacant. If you ask me, it's not gonna be LKQ who's gonna be occupying that. It will be, your typical GNC use on a major arterial highway in the center of the county. Keep in mind that GNC in this county, build out of GNC in this county is 50% office and 50% general commercial. That's the historical pattern on 19, on 41, on all of the major roadways, and it's a function of the population and the service demands from the population. More equal office in GNC.
Oh, okay, that's all I
Thanks.
just unclear as to whether they were occupying it or not.
Any other discussion?
I have one other question about
Commissioner Stone?
the setbacks for GNC, or the buffer, I should say, buffers for GNC property. What are they, and what are they requesting? Not the auto salvage area, I understand that clearly, but the buffers along the Norval Bryant.
Behind the proposed GNC. Is that your question?
No, the GNC. Okay, I understand behind the GNC. I don't have any issue with that.
The GNC portion is not included with the plan unit development, and so it would have to develop in accordance with our land development code.
Okay.
Which right now would be a 10-foot wide type A landscaping buffer.
Okay, and they're not asked for any relief from that?
No.
No, all right.
Okay. Other discussion?
Now, Mr. Chair, I'd like just
Commissioner
to
Barnes?
echo Commissioner Bramlett. He kind of stole the words out of my mouth. I totally in favor of this project. I think it's good for the area. I live in the area. I've never seen an issue with the traffic that I heard today. I travel that road abundantly to the Homosassa or the Crystal River Army National Guard Center pretty much daily since I work for FEMA, and I've never seen that traffic issue there. So I'm okay with the setbacks. I understand the setbacks. I understand the diversion swell, and I'm in total support for it.
Thank you. I think I'd like to begin by saying I hear and understand and recognize the concerns of the residents of Pine Ridge. However, I think the applicant has presented a good case. They appear to be a good corporate citizen, and I plan to vote in favor of this. Anyone else? No one else on the board has any comments. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, for the purpose of a motion.
Commissioner Bramlett.
The Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA-AA-PUD-21-11 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and the Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with conditions of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
I have a motion by Commissioner Bramlett. Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Commissioner Scragg. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I would like to declare 5-minute recess. Vehicle, maybe you're a classic car person, and you needed a radio knob for a '67 Camaro. They got it. I don't know how they find it.
Bless you.
And when you go by on the east side, you can see all the pickup beds stacked.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
All different types.
Yep. And I bet they sell the heck out of that.
It's a neat operation, neat, clean operation.
Yes.
It's a very clean
I agree.
operation. You go by there, and it's always very spiffy looking.
I agree. Yep. it seems to be a quality operation. And you know, when you say, you use the term, old term, junkyard, to somebody, there's a negative connotation, you know, and that's not what that place is.
And then other industrial parks that they're opening and no highway system.
Right.
That's a strange place for industrial.
It is.
I mean, why would they?
But we approved it.
I wasn't here.
Me neither.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can see where you would approve it, but do anybody wanna use it?
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
remains
want,
to be seen.
I want to build locomotives in Holder.
Yeah.
And how am I going to get them in and out?
Right.
Yeah.
How am I
You'll
going
have
to
to
get the
build
raw,
tracks.
how am I going to get the raw materials there to do it?
Okay, no problem.
That was a Stillwell project too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
several meetings.
Yeah, it was.
You get behind somebody, even if it's 55
He
miles
seems
out,
to
they
be,
He's the go-to guy
Yeah.
back in,
for land
Yeah.
development.
back in Varian, we had one attorney, if you
I can't picture
wanted
where they
something,
possibly
you
He
saw
was the,
Dennis.
Okay, I'd like to reconvene this meeting.
There's no transportation.
Time has arrived
there at all.
for hearing on CU 21-09. Susan? Susan, not Amy.
Yes, that's right, thank you. This application proposes to exceed the animal schedule on 5.6 acres in the low-intensity coastal and lakes land use district. The site lies on East Turner Camp Road in the Inverness area. This is looking north on East Turner Camp. And this is the view looking south on East Turner Camp Road. The application site is on the right in this photo. And the site plan as submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
I'm nervous. I don't know why. I've
Take
been
your
doing
time.
this
You
for a long
don't-
time.
Don't be nervous.
Well,
It's,
I'm
on-
glad
it's
they
only
all
us.
laughed. I was like, perfect. That's even better. So my name is Nadine Reynolds. I do live there now. I own the property at 6535 East Turner Camp Road. We're living there right now by permit because we're building a house. I'm requesting to exceed the allowed amount of animals on the property. We have 5.6 acres. I have a small farm that I've been running in Bushnell. I own 5 acres in Bushnell. I've had it for 6 years, almost 6 years. I own a herd of Nigerian dwarf goats, and they're dairy goats, and they are 22 inches tall, and about the biggest one I have is 60 pounds. So I have a small herd of them. Right now I have 22 that I own. I'm asking to own up to 25 on my property. The stocking rate that's listed for the county is 1 goat per acre, but it's also 1 cow per acre. So in doing research, in Bushnell there's no restriction. Sumter County is a lot different as far as the area that I was in. In doing the research, when we bought the property and talking to the university, the recommended stocking rate for goats by University of Florida is 7 goats per acre. 5 goats would be equal to a cow, 7 goats would be equal to a horse, approximately. So if the stocking rate right now is listed as 1 cow per acre, their recommendation would be 5 goats per acre. They are going based on full-size, standard-sized goats, which can be up to 200 pounds. I used to own one. They're about this tall. They're big. I own only dwarf goats. So I also own 4 pigs. They're called kuni pigs. They do not root. They're grazing pigs, so they eat grass and hay, and then also their feed. But they're small, smaller than the normal pig. There is no such thing as a micro pig, mini pig. There's no such thing. They are approximately 80 to 150-ish pounds, the ones that I own. Because they don't root, they don't create big holes, which in turn doesn't create big mud puddles, which helps with smell, flies, all of that stuff that comes along with a normal pig, which is the reason why I have them, because realistically for my family, they're not my favorite. Pigs were never my favorite. So I'm requesting to exceed the schedule, I guess, I don't know exactly what it's called, but the schedule of what would be available or what would be allowed on my property. Things that I've done already since I applied, we've put up fencing, just because I have 6 children in addition to this. So we put up fencing all along the road, and we've penned in the area that we're allowed, or that we would put animals, which is, it shows in the picture that front, it's kind of hard to see, but the front corner there along the road. So we've already penned that. The corner of the pen, it's 300 feet from the nearest residence on this, is that the south corner? Is that what I call that? So the south corner, that family residence there, it's about 300 feet. The corner of my pen is 80 feet from their property line, but 300 feet from their house. And then going the other direction, that other house is over 400 feet away. I tried to put the pen in a location where it would disrupt the least amount of people, because not everybody likes animals like I do. So I put it near the, on the front of the property. There's a tree line that is there. You can see through the trees, but it's not just an open field. I don't rely on the Florida grass. These are all show animals, and I breed them mostly. I own them and I breed them. I have 18 girls and 4 boys. We breed them for 4-H kids. My kids also show, our family shows, and then we have the kidding season, which is usually in the spring, and the kids come and they have an animal to show at their fair or their local shows. That's what I do. I started because my son was highly allergic to cow milk when he was a baby, and that's how I started in goats, and then my family fell in love with it, and we continued and then was part of the community with 4-H. So I'm asking to bring that here with me. I've placed the barn, we've ordered the barn, because either way we can have animals, I just don't know how many I'll be allowed. So we've ordered the barn, and it should be put in a couple of weeks. We've made sure that it's meeting the setback requirement of 50 feet or more from the road frontage and from the property line across the way. That other lot is a 3-ish acre lot that's vacant. It's all woods, really dense woods in that corner there. So I don't know what will go there or if somebody will build at some point, but we made sure that the barn meets the setbacks. As far as management goes, I guess maybe that would be a question. We clean barn. The barn that I'm putting in will have 5 big stalls. It also has a common area for the animals, and then a 12 by 20 closed-in milk room because they're dairy goats. And that's where my office area and milk machine and all of that I use to keep them. You have to milk them in order to show them. So that's why I do that. It's not like a commercial milk them and and sell it. It's more of to maintain the herd that I have to have that area. So that's part of the barn. We're not open to the public. In fact, I try to keep a very closed environment because of biosecurity reasons. We have a tested herd, and people coming in and out to look, like I get calls a lot to see if people can come and, look at it. We don't allow that for biosecurity reasons, but also in the neighborhood. Our old place was not as much of a neighborhood. This is more of a neighborhood, so having an open door would mean more traffic, more people coming in and out and bothersome to the neighborhood. So we're by appointment only, and most of the time, the only traffic we really have is in the spring when we have babies that need to go to homes, and those are by appointments. I don't know I think I covered all of it. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions from staff?
You shouldn't be nervous. You're
Thank
doing
you.
fine. One question for you. I know that they have a letter of objection in the packet, but then on
Yes.
blue this morning, there was a letter where she retracted that or
Yes.
changed whatever. Can you elaborate a little bit what you might have been able to talk to her about on that?
Yeah, so our neighbor, which is this house down in the bottom corner, they're about 300 feet or so from the pen. I didn't even know there was a woman that lived there. There's a guy that we see once in a while with his guy friends that are out in their barn. That's the only people I've ever seen there. So I was surprised to see this. Never even talked to them. We've tried to wave and stuff. They just kind of keep to themselves. So I got a copy of the letter that was sent in about things that weren't really true. Us living there with a porta potty. Porta potty, we're building a house. It's required by law, by the county. It's required for us to have a porta potty for the workers. We're not using the porta potty. We have a travel trailer that we have a permit to use. We had a portable septic brought in from a septic company for ourselves. The generator concern she had and the power concern she had. So right by their house, I think it even shows it, that there's a power pole right there. SECO wanted us to temporarily live right there at that power pole. It wasn't gonna cost me anything to drop a line from there. I paid $3,000 to move us 300 feet or more from them, because I wouldn't do that to a neighbor. I wasn't gonna park myself. It's on their back porch and pool. I would be right there next to them. So there were miscommunications, there were assumptions made. So after I found out that she lived there, I contacted her and asked to talk to her, and basically talked to her, and was like, oh, oh, I didn't know any of that. So she made assumptions, that's all. Their barn is 83 feet from the corner of my pen, but it's a barn, like it's where they keep their airboat. Their house is way up at the front of the property, so we're limited right now, especially because there's really high water. The back corner is a flood zone, just a small portion of it, but the water right now they have a pond, and then there's a small lake on the other side. The lake's overflowing into their pond and partially into the flood zone in my yard. So we can't, there's not a whole lot of places we can go right now. So we talked, and after we talked, she texted me and said, I feel so much better, it's a relief. I'm sending them a new message to let them know we're okay. There's not an issue. So I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we did that, because I felt bad.
Thank you. Questions from the board? I have one. I see in the front, you've got a 34-foot hog panel with wood posts.
Yes.
Will the hogs always be there?
No.
But my question really is, what differentiates the two larger plots? One marked spare grazing lot, and the other one's, a general grazing lot, for lack of a
That front
specificity.
triangle, that front spare lot we were going to try to use that to allow them, goats eat weeds and they eat leaves, they don't eat grass. So that's overgrown, bunch of trees. So we are fencing that either way, and my plan was to allow them over there because they're expensive and they're show animals, I don't leave them where I can't see them. So when I'm out, was planning to use that. Since then, now that I found out the husband that lives next door, I guess, works nights, which we weren't aware of, so he sleeps during the day. We probably won't use that for them at all, quite honestly, because I told her we would try to not be over there if we can help it, so even though we can. So what I did is I put up the pen that's existing right now does not include that bottom triangle. It's just the one that's up above. We put in, we had hired a company to come fence. It's got 4x4 goat fencing, which is what I've used before, and we did the whole thing with that. So instead of hog panels, and I like it to look decent, so it's all matching all the way around with gates. So we may not even use that.
Generally speaking, on any given day, the animals will be grazing basically to the left of your home.
They'll be, no. I don't know if I can show you, like, where the barn is.
Yes.
Where it says 65 feet.
Yes.
So that along the driveway right now, and then coming down, and then across, that's a pen right now. And that's where they're gonna be.
Okay.
And then the rest of it, once it's completely fenced, it would be letting them out to use that space, but supervised. They will live in that area only.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other questions from the board?
Yes. So, you're breeding and selling, did I understand? Or you're breeding and donating? What exactly?
They are bred every year. In order to keep them in milk, so that I can show them, they have to be bred. That's how that works. And then they have milk, and then they can go to shows. Because they're dairy goats, I have to. The babies, some of them we give away, depending on, like the boys will go sometimes to fair, children that go to fair. They're less desirable, boys are, but they'll use them for certain shows.
Right.
Girls are usually sold, and those ones are usually sold with papers, and then they go on to also breeding and the same thing, into a dairy herd usually, or to a 4-H family that does dairy animals.
Okay. And you said this is not open to the public. This would be
No.
strictly by appointment to pick up
That's
one of
the
your
only way
animals.
they come, yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you. Joanna?
All right, you're done. Am I done?
All right, so this is an application to allow exceeding the animal schedule on 5.6 acres in the CL Land Use District. And as you can see, it's a very large piece, but it's right on Turner Camp Road. Now, just to the west of it, and I don't have a pointer to say, but just to the west there is a house, but then right next to that is a large Bark Central dog park. I've been there with my dogs. It's not exactly quiet. Usually when my dogs are there, it's not quiet. But that is in the area. There is some multifamily across the street, and it's generally a rural area otherwise. There you can see that city mark. That's getting into the dog park area where it's marked as city, and then you have multifamily across the street. You can see the little outline of the buildings. So this is the site plan that she's gone over very well. The purple area is where she's planning on keeping the animals predominantly, as she talked about. This is a close-up of it with the spare grazing lot, and those are the pens. And you'll see in the staff report, and she touched on a little bit, the stocking rate. When I was employed by a neighboring county, I did more research on livestock than I ever thought I would. And one thing I did find out is that our animal schedule is probably not current. It's not up to speed. And particularly she's using some kind of pygmy, miniature, however you want to call it, animals, so it's very hard to compare. So looking at that stocking rate, I did compare those in there. I don't think that our numbers are real life anymore. They're from 1990. We really need to look at it again, and specifically the breeds that she's talking about. My very vague idea to try to show you what the difference is, trying to compare it to a pygmy goat, because I could not find any actual Nigerian dwarf goats comparing it in size, but the pygmy is all the way there on the right, and certainly not a normal sized goat, not normal, a larger goat, I would say normal. And the same thing with the Kuna pigs. It's very small compared to a normal pig. And this again is the staff report. She is asking to do the 25 goats, 4 pigs, 2 dozen laying hens, and a rooster on the 5.6 acres. The rooster, again, I did a lot of research on that. There are devices that you can use, pro and con. There's a lot of research on that, whether they're good or they're bad. And this is. We have nobody here complaining about it. I don't know about the rooster itself. That's not normally something we allow, but again, I think we're kind of outdated. There are methods to try to keep that crowing down that is possible if that becomes a problem. So our supporting this, the findings are generally positive simply because of the breeds that she's proposing and how she's trying to place it on the lot. That's it.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions for staff? Thank you. Does the board? I have one.
I have one.
Okay.
And I have one.
We'll start at that end.
And I have one too.
Commissioner Stone.
Let's go all the way
We're going to start with Commissioner
All
Stone.
right.
Go ahead.
How much do I know
Okay.
about animals?
First is with respect to, equivalency of one animal or another. I don't think the concern would be so much the physical size of the animal or even how much grazing space the animal requires or would take. I think the concern would be, at least as far as Citrus County is concerned, is the amount of waste and noise generated by the animal. Okay, and I would contend that 25 goats, no matter what their size are, would constitute a substantial increase in the amount of waste and noise over a horse or a cow even. I guess the other item that I would have is perhaps our standards that were developed in 1990 are, to the contrary, more applicable to this situation because the county was more rural at that time, and perhaps the developers of the requirements were more familiar with animals than we are in more of an urban county as we are now. So I would think that the land development code's limits right now are particularly applicable to an area where we're more crowded. And I guess my last issue would be, is anybody's ever lived next to a rooster would be out of their mind to want to encourage it anywhere in any proximity to themselves.
And I'll respond, not really questions, but I appreciate them anyway. I don't agree with you on the noise and manure being the predominant thing. The stocking rate that the University of Georgia and the University of Florida has since adopted was reflecting pasture rates, reflecting how much pasture land you can do. And I think that they did address that concern, and that's why I do think that our numbers are not in whack with what current standards are and what current agriculture practices are, and specifically these breeds. I agree with you that the 25 goats is a lot, but I think these particular goats and how we treat goats, which is similar to a horse, which is not applicable, we have some things to do on that. I do agree with you on the rooster component. Like I said, I did more research on that than I ever wanted to in a neighboring county, and it is a very controversial item. You can address that or not. There are anti-devices that can deal with it. Whether they're humane or not is debatable.
My question is,
Commissioner
are
Royce?
the breeds of animals that she's currently proposing, is that a condition, or can she
Yeah.
change breeds?
Yes, if you can see in the conditions, they are specifically referencing those breeds, the Nigerian dwarf goats and the kuna, saying it right, I hope, pigs are specifically in there. So she could not trade that out for a regular, normal, run-of-the-mill large goat, for example.
How would you know, though?
Well, they are different in size. So if we had a complaint, then code enforcement gets to go out there with a picture and figure it out. But hopefully not.
Commissioner Bass?
She indicated that she would be breeding and selling her animals. Do we have an issue with this actually being a business in this site?
We don't, as long as it gives the appearance of a single-family residence. If she starts having tractor trailers come up there to drop off things, or a line of customers out the door, that gives the appearance of a resident, of a commercial business, and it is a concern. But people can do transactions on their site as long as it still gives the appearance of a residence. So someone coming there and picking out a pig, for example, would be okay.
Okay, and then we have limited her number of her animals, and obviously during breeding season, these are going to be exceeded. Do we have an issue knowing that there will be an exceedance for some period of time?
There is an allowance in the land development code for up to whenever they're weaned, and it's based on the actual animal, that you can exceed that for a temporary period of time until they're weaned. So that is automatically in the land development code.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
My question is, I see that the proposed site is in close proximity to the city of Inverness, and I know we're not the city of Inverness, and we haven't heard anything pro or con from the city of Inverness on this application. Do we think they're going to care about this once it's approved?
There are no city sites here as well, but we did send it out to all the butters. So I don't anticipate anything. As I said, this is a very rural area near a very large functioning dog park and apartments. We did not get anything other than the one letter that we talked about.
Okay, thank you. David?
Yes, the only other thing is, Mr. Bass mentioned it already, but it says on the staff report for raising of animals for non-commercial purposes. That's kind of what threw me a little bit, because obviously there is some commercial, and even in her description of what she's doing, she's calling it a business.
That is a quote from the land development code, and when we talk about non-commercial purposes, yes, you can, for example, have a dog and breed it as long as it does not give the appearance of a resident, of a commercial business. You are able to do that depending on the appearance. When we say commercial, it's a pet store, for example, or a clearly, goats for sale, with signage, etc. That would be a commercial purpose. The fact that they have a transaction is understandable as long as it still gives that appearance.
Right, so they don't have like a physical sign, but she would have like an electronic sign.
Nope, no electronic sign.
Online,
Online.
social
I'm sorry,
media,
I'm thinking of flashing
not like
light
plug-in,
LEDs.
no, right.
Okay, yes,
Right, so-
yes, absolutely on the internet if she wants to advertise, as long as the actual site gives the appearance of a single-family residence. Yeah.
And then
Just
the
like
only
you and
thi-
I can sell on eBay, but it's okay.
Right, and then the only other thing I would mention is I almost started laughing when you were telling out the animals, because I thought you were going to finish with and a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah,
It's kind of what it sounded like to me.
No,
I just
yeah,
couldn't help
I've
it.
done more research on animals in the past year than I ever expected to, because I'm not a farm girl, but Ms. Reynolds has helped educate me a little bit on that too.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barnes?
So you get to the farmer at last. I'm a farmer at heart.
I apologize.
No, thank you for that.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
I believe the Land Development Division, this code was partly written by my dear friend, Dr. Dumas, who just passed away last week. So I really take heart that the code is probably pretty accurate. Being him graduating from the University of Florida, the same place I graduated from, and attended with another good friend of mine, another veterinarian in Tampa. But with that being said, I do have a couple questions for our applicant. One is on your 25 Nigerian dwarf goats. I've had goats. In Hillsborough County, I was allowed to have 15 goats per acre in Hillsborough County. What do you do with all your waste?
Well,
Because there's a lot of it.
Yeah, the barn gets cleaned daily, and the pasture pen, whatever you want to call that, is raked once a week. We have a tractor with a rake on the back. We rake it all once a week, and compost. That's what we did at our last house. Usually hay, wasted hay. Goat waste is not extremely smelly, and it's not, but we still clean it. We still rake it all out. Same thing for the pigs. The pigs are my concern mostly, where if it's not cleaned often enough, it would attract flies and cause other issues. The goats, not so much, but it gets done every week, and we compost. So my plan, and I haven't figured out exactly where, I need to find a spot to compost that's not going to affect any of my neighbors, to keep it. So more than likely, when they're brought there, that we'll have the same type of setbacks as a barn would have, 50 feet at least off of the line or something like that. I don't, if I use a barrel like I have in the past, our last property it wasn't required. We had 1,600 acres behind us. Like there was no reason to worry so much about people around. For me, it's a little bit more of a struggle because I'm trying to make sure that I fit in okay with the rest of them, but I'm still able to take care of the animals properly and give them enough space. So more than likely I'll end up with either a compost system, a barrel, or we'll do what we did at the last house, which is compost right in a bin.
But you won't be bagging it and sending it to the landfill, correct? Okay.
No, I didn't even know that was an option, but no.
No,
We've
it's
never
not
done
an
that
option.
before.
That's why I just
I
wanted
was
to
gonna
make
say no, no.
What kind of hens are you raising?
What kind of, hens? We don't have any right now. When we moved, we stopped with the chickens altogether, because I need to get my house built and set up before I take on any, and we may or may not even bother with that part of it. I just thought while we were here discussing it, if I want to do that, I would like to have the option. If a rooster is a concern, I'm totally fine not having a rooster. I don't have to have a rooster to have eggs. I don't need the rooster to be there. So that part of it, I'm really not that concerned about. Normally you have a rooster that's with your hens, but eggs are, they lay eggs with or without a rooster. I don't need them to be there.
Yeah, they do a lot more than lay eggs.
Yes.
Multiple times. And then the one last thing I want to touch on is the rooster anti-crow device. I'm totally against that.
I've never used
I
one.
believe it's 100% cruel.
Yeah.
To the roosters, having roosters and chickens my whole life, and speaking upon that, I would not be in favor of that component being in the application.
I personally want to speak on that. If I was allowed a rooster, I would never do that. So if that's a concern, I don't want to have a rooster. I'd prefer not to.
But you don't know if you're gonna have Rhode Island Reds, or you don't know.
Right. Normally what I've done in the past, we had, in our last property, I had Wyandottes, I had lavender Orpingtons and other Orpingtons.
So you have show hands.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I usually buy them as pullets, and then sometimes you get the occasional rooster, and as soon as we know it's a rooster, it goes to the market or somewhere, not, because I can't, even at the last property, I only had one rooster.
You don't wanna fight the roosters?
No, and I don't particularly love to hear them either. So, no, you get used to it, but, yeah.
That's all, thank you.
As far as, can I just say one other thing as far as waste goes that was mentioned? One 1,200-pound horse has a lot more waste than one 20-pound goat. That's just, I know the stocking rate says what it says, but as far as concern for waste, it's just logic to say a big dog has a lot more waste than a little dog. A big animal, 1,200-pound horse or cow, has much more waste than a tiny little goat.
But the waste of a goat is more
often
and more dangerous than horse or cow manure.
Right.
So that was what the
Right.
purpose of my question.
Yes.
It's not just,
Right, I was mentioning, I think, because he mentioned the difference of waste for the,
Thank you. To make it official, I will open this hearing to the public for any public input. Seeing no public input, I will close the public portion of the meeting and return it back to the board for discussion and possible action.
And just to point out, excuse me, there were 5 conditions suggested in the staff report. Condition number 4 includes the statement, methods of waste management, pest control, and odor abatement must be demonstrated. I think that really would mean if somebody complained, of course, I wouldn't be able to evaluate that, but.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Bass.
the applicant has made it clear that she could live without having the rooster on the property. I think therefore we should not allow the rooster, which would allow number 5 to be removed. So she would only end up with the 25 goats, the pigs, and the hens.
I agree.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that we should leave number 5 in and say that the rooster is absolutely prohibited under any circumstances, to just reinforce the current.
Yes, we'll word that appropriately.
Yeah, the Land Development Code doesn't allow it, so if we don't say it here, she can't have one. So.
The code does not allow it.
Right, so condition number 1, if you want to do it, remove the last bullet of 1 rooster, and then condition number 5, of course, would be
So it's
removed
not
because
allowed,
it's
so
not
it's-
needed,
so
not
it's just
allowed,
silent,
period, right.
I'd like to touch on that rooster thing one more time then, with that comment. You know, the hens are the female. The rooster is what would pregnate the egg. Hens can lay eggs and you can eat eggs, but it's not fair to the hens not to have a rooster. So if we're gonna allow hens, we should allow at least 1 rooster, because you gotta be able to, I've had hens. Hens does not live very long without a rooster. The rooster is the protection of those hens. So that'd be back to my cruelty part of it, as far as not having a rooster.
Protection from what?
From any wildlife, any predators.
Are they gonna be housed? Like, these are housed hens?
Yes, they're cooped.
Yeah, they're cooped.
They're not free range.
Yeah, but they can still get, foxes still get in there, no matter how good you do the fence. You still got, other predators that can get, that can get to them. And hens don't fight, they only fight each other. They don't fight a rooster, they don't fight another predator. The rooster actually does the fighting and does the protection. So if you're just gonna house the hens and keep the hens, then you're just gonna raise eggs.
I think that's the intent, though. The only thing I would say is that the Land Development Code doesn't allow for a rooster, and you don't wanna allow for an anti-crow device, but you wanna allow for a rooster. So we're kinda like, we're in conflict there.
Well, I agree with, being a farmer, I would love it. Roosters are fine with me. I don't have a problem with the rooster or it's crowing.
Right, it's the
But I
neighbors, though.
understand, I understand the neighborhood on that. So that's why if you're gonna allow a rooster, I would not be in favor of the anti-crowing device, which is very
But you
cruel.
said if we allowed hens, you wanted to have a rooster.
Well,
You're just talking it through.
Just talking
Okay.
it through.
All right, I'm trying to understand, because I would feel like the owners they'd take the place of the rooster, in my opinion.
Depends.
I mean, depending on what kind of cage they can put together. And,
We don't know exactly what kind of hen she's gonna raise.
Right, she may not even have any,
Yeah.
but if she's gonna raise them, she's gonna try and protect them, in my opinion, I think, right? Or you just don't wanna.
True.
They sound like some expensive hens. I have zero clue what I'm talking about right now. The names sounded very fancy, like, you know what I mean?
They can range up to $100 a hen.
Right.
Well, the consensus was to not allow a rooster. Unless,
Yes, the hens are gonna have to take their chances on their own without the rooster.
Roll the dice.
okay, further discussion.
I think Ms. Scragg could make the motion. It's her turn. She's the alternative. I think
We need a motion.
if she's in favor, I think that we should allow her to make the motion. That way she gets practice.
It's all in the
All
back.
right, well, then I have to follow the rules and regulations
Oh,
and
of
say
course.
it correctly?
Yes, you do.
Okay, and I have to
Yeah,
follow
you gotta figure out which one is right.
Right.
now.
Yeah.
If I figure this all out, you're gonna have to help me.
There's a motion for conditional use near the back.
Okay, wait.
That's right. It's actually on the very first pages of the motion language. And it's a long one too, you get to read it.
Boy, we sit
You
you
are
here
just
till
having too
12
much
o'clock,
fun,
you get a
Dave.
mood going. We get a
Okay, so
mood.
this is variance approved, I'm supposed to read?
It's a conditional
Not
use.
variance, conditional use.
Conditional, oh my God. I
Should be on the
didn't know
front of that.
In front of this?
Right there.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. Motion. The Planning and Development Commission finds that the application number.
CU 21-09.
Okay.
What he said.
Consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and the Citrus County Development Code, and the board approves the application based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
And I think it's approved with conditions, correct? Not just approved, right?
Approved with conditions.
With conditions.
With conditions.
Thank you.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hang on, she wasn't done,
Oh.
she wasn't done reading.
I interrupted her quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's my fault.
I thought I didn't see that over there. Okay, this has been determined that approving the proposed special rules governing individual conditional uses of the type involved, that proposed development with conditions and safeguards attached will be generally compatible with adjacent properties and other properties in the district, and that the PDC is empowered upon section of the LDC described in the application to grant this conditional use.
Second. Good job.
We have a motion and a second by Commissioner Scragg and a second by Commissioner Bramlett.
Just to make sure that
Just
we're
to
clear.
clarify,
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
the
let's go.
conditions, we are removing the bullet that refers to one rooster, and we're removing condition 5.
Yes. Agreed.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for motion, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
By the way, I know Blue Country, West Country down in Broward County.
Oh, that's right, we got that other one.
You've got one more, and I'm sorry, you do have one more.
Next week they had roosters, we could, depending on how the wind was blowing.
Oh, yeah.
You could hear it for a
Oh,
long
yeah,
distance.
Okay, CPA 21-12.
Thank you all for being patient. I know it's after 12. I thought this would be a lot quicker than this, but this is an internal application called Private Property Rights Element. And what the heck is this? Was mandated by our legislature and our governor this year. All jurisdictions have to adopt this no later than any amendment initiated after July 1st, 2021. So for us, that's your next meeting. So I'm just a little bit ahead just in case. So what this does is state, you'll see the proposed ordinance in there. It comes directly from statutes that the Citrus County will consider private property rights in their decision making. We already do that. There's really nothing that is going to be changing as far as the way we consider it. Now, the Thousand Friends of Florida, and I put some information in your packet, decided to take this opportunity to also statewide make a model element that also would give rights to public speaking and how you have to give people the right to due process, etc. We have that in our quasi-judicial ordinance, so we're way ahead of the game on that. We don't need to include that in our comprehensive plan because we've already addressed that in our own way. We have our own quasi-judicial. We're very good about that. I know that as commissioners, you consider private property rights already. It doesn't mean that this element means that you can do whatever you want on your property. That's not what it says. What it says is that you have the right to develop your property. You have the right to sell and buy property. Yes, you do. There are still laws which we still have to follow, but this will remind us that yes, people do have the right to use their property as long as they comply with the law. So there's not a lot to it. There's a few policies and a brand new element and a goal and an objective and a little bit of an overview as to where this came from. This is mandated again by the legislature and by the governor, so we are proposing this. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question with 3.
3, okay.
And it's going to remove requirements for use by family members and caretakers. So if you're not a family member,
Okay, we're not doing that application. That is an ordinance amendment that we did for, I think, looking at minutes maybe?
Yeah, it was last
Yeah,
July.
yeah.
okay, because I just didn't understand that. If you're not a family member and you're not a caretaker, then you're a tenant.
Right, and tenants can, I mean, going off topic a little bit, tenants can certainly, we had no way of mandating that you're a member of the family, so you can stay. You're not a member of the family, you can't. So we took that out. And that was adopted yesterday, right? Tuesday, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah. But this particular one is simply private property rights element. It's mandated by the statutes. We're using statutory legislation. I also left in there a consultant's guide from Walton County, just so you can see all the jurisdictions are doing this now. There's really nowhere else to look at, but they had a consultant do it, similar, had the same conclusion I did, the very similar language. That's it.
Anyone else?
Just seems a little kind of like whatever.
I've got to guess that somewhere in Florida, someone's not giving people due process or not giving them the right to do something. I don't know. I no idea.
Right.
I hate to guess the legislature, but we already are considering this here. I think we're in good shape. We do due process. We have quasi-judicial. We're way ahead of the game.
Okay, I trust your good judgment.
Well, thank you, but I think we do a good consideration.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve CPA 21-12.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Bramlett,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bass. All those any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. One other item, Joanna, it's a 2022 meeting schedule.
Yes, please.
Is that, we just need approval from the board?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the NAR same first and third Thursdays at 9 o'clock,
Yes.
consistent with
Correct.
the historical schedule.
Right.
Where did this come from?
It's the very end of your
It's the
packet.
very last item on the agenda.
You got it right, isn't that it?
I never
It
go,
basically approves the
Well, that's
meeting
21.
schedule for
that's
next year.
21, I never go that far. So you got
It's
20
there, believe me.
You got 22 too?
Yeah, you got it right here.
We have
Oh,
we
that's
have to
20.
yeah.
No,
And
you're
none
going
none
wrong.
of you are up for renewal for your terms, so you all need to be here 2022. Although the
Maybe.
commissioners did just remove the term limit criteria for planning board as well on Tuesday, so none of you can term out either. So you're all stuck here 2022 at least.
You just love us, don't
I
you?
love you. I do. I appreciate you very much and all that you do, and it's after 12, so thank you for doing all this.
I found it in the back of the.
I move that we approve the
by the
meeting
minutes.
days for 2022.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
And quickly, in October, for 4 applications on your first meeting in October, 6 on the second. Our phones are ringing off the hook with development, so things are not going to slow down. Thank you.
Just gauging by the thickness, I guess Stillwell's not on the next agenda.
Yeah, you are correct.
Just saying, you know.
I'm gonna miss a short one because of that.
Now you can adjourn.
No, I didn't get that.
Mr. Facemeyer, you need to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we did.
I don't have anything for 2022.
I think it was up by where the minutes were,
It was up by the.
or the map.
The very, very back. The very last thing.
So the very last thing was back here. No, this is the end of my packet.
Boy, she's not wasting any time. We're not even out of our seats and
Cutting
starting.
in the lunch hour.
See, I thought it was.
Hey.
Wait a minute.
Oh, not really. Well, that was a secret place to put it.
Yeah, okay, he found it.
Okay, where was it now?
It's at the very end of Joanna's property rights
Presentation,
thing.
yes.
Oh,
It's super fine print.
you know we're trying. Yeah, you know we're trying to hide things. It's just a date some next year.
I have a situation,
That I didn't.
the picture for you.
Okay,
Oh, I'm gonna give you my opinion.
all right.
I bet you you'll agree with me. Christine Johnson and her husband have pulled 2 permits, one to build a home, one to build a detached garage. There has no work been done at the home, no inspections, no nothing, but they are progressing in with the garage.
So when do you
first.
do
She calls up today and she says, we wanna have permanent power hooked up to the garage. And it has 2 separate services.
Does she have a, is the house permit active or something?
It's only active
I know because like all the
until like
schools
10,
have teacher shortages.
the 25th of October. So she's
And
got
like, are
another
they
month
hiring
left on
though? I
that.
mean, I
Right,
understand the
right,
teacher
so
shortages,
we can
but
do it with a condition
hired?
that the house
So they are.
must be established, must remain active, house permit, however you wanna say it. I wanna make sure that as long as we have that one still going down the track for the main use.
This is the part that bothers me. What bothers me is that they focused all their energy on the
Garage,
garage.
right, it's not a pool.
And in the conversation, she says she wants power to the garage so that she can park her 5th wheel trailer
Oh, no.
on the site.
Right.
They wanna live on the site.
Right. What we
So
tell
there's 2
people up
things.
front is they can develop them
Summers.
simultaneously, but they can't do the accessory first, so they went it backwards.
They did do it
Yeah,
backwards.
so I would say
And they
no.
know that, I know they wanna park their 5th wheel trailer, and as it stands right now, and I gotta question this, how is it that they had the money to pour concrete and so on in the garage, and they pursued the garage
Right.
construction, but they don't have money to do anything on the house?
You know, like I said, I could probably swing it with a condition, but honestly, we tell people that the best you can do is simultaneous.
I think the
So, yeah, I do
I
too.
think they would encourage
So I
the
think,
big
so I
deals.
think
Oh,
we
and
just,
by the way, it just so happens that the garage doesn't.
Domestic work, which is.
And the garage has electrical in it.
because we talked to people before about this, and we told them no. Yeah, I think that the house has to be established. So once they get the house T-pole, then sure, but a separate permit to the garage, they can't establish it until that CO's established, yeah.
Probably
You wanna call her and tell her what her
She's not,
conditions are?
she's
and
not
how she
asking
can-
me, but, for power, so.
She's asking me for power.
I know, and-
But I'm not giving it.
Well, then,
I mean, my first thing,
tell her no, I don't have time to call her, but tell her no.
had a bunch of chicken.
no.
Yeah, tell her no, and then she's welcome,
Started out, so
right.
I mean, broke
She's
down.
welcome to call
Yeah.
site review or planners to, if she wants to
Yeah,
argue.
they're better
with them,
fertilizer
nothing
than
to
goat
argue.
poop,
She
though.
knows she
Goat
can't have an
poop's
accessory
hazardous.
without.
Yeah, right.
I
That
think
was
that
what
by giving
my
her
point I was
power
trying to
to
get
the
to, was
garage,
what she
what
wanna
we're
do with
saying is, you have
That
every
was
right to
25
use that
bucks.
garage when
That
no
does
primary has
55
been
gallons.
established.
Which we really can't
And
do.
that's not right.
Right, we told them simultaneous. You can do it so you can run together, but you can't run.
Take care.
Yeah,
He's got a subject that I knew what I talked about.
The answer is no.
Poop.
yeah, the answer is no.
See, you did agree with me.
Y'all have a great week.
You too.
Bye, Joanne.
Okay.
But thank you very much. Hey, I know Dr. Dumas too, and I had no idea he does those. That's very impressive. It says a lot about him actually, that 1990 to
Susan,
2021
you built your
is
hair.
the first time we've been questioning.
It's not normally like that, is it?
I was in New York when I got a text, and I said, no way.
Oh, okay.
A couple weeks ago, I talked to him, and he had no issue.
Adored him,
Worked for
yeah,
you.
adored him. I
And,
was really sad to see.
Richard Kane, Dr. Kane from Care Animal Hospital in Brandon, texted me, said, you know,
Oh,
Dr. Dumas, and I'm like, no way.
I didn't know he wrote the animal schedule. I thought you were.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many conversations with him. You know, when I first started coming to the board, he said, he encouraged, pretty much encouraged me to stay here forever.
Good, good. Yeah, I always loved him. He's taken care of many of my animals, but, yeah, no, it says a lot that 31 years later, we're finally going, maybe we should look at this. So that's really says a lot.
Yeah, if he wrote it, which I believe he did,
I didn't realize he did. Yeah, that's good. I thought Gary Maynard did.
or at least had some
He
part
might,
of it,
he might have. Gary might have consulted with him.
then a lot of it was medically speaking, and I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the poop of the goats.
Probably.
Because
Yeah.
it is,
No, I'm
goat
not
poop is
doubting
very
you.
hazardous.
And I agree with you on the anti-crow. I just, whatever.
As soon as I read that on an airplane, last night coming home from New York, and I'm like, because I did a drive-by last
Yeah.
week, or 2 weeks ago, and then I'm reading, I'm going, no way.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either, honestly, but that was what Marion County finally came up with. I don't know.
American County's a lot more lenient, I think.
They
with
really
the-
are, they really are.
Thought so.
Yeah, they are, you're
Well, they
right.
have all the horses.
Yeah, and a lot of roosters.
So what do you know anything about the Academy of Environmental Science?
Not a lot, no. I know Chuck Dixon does. He had his kids both go there. Mine did not.